The world mocked him for being quirkless, unaware he harbored a monster. Imagine Izuku Midoriya inheriting not one for all, but the ruthless prowess of the Sorcerer Killer, Toji Fushiguro. No quirks, just pure, terrifying physical dominance. This isn't a hero's journey. It's a carnage-filled path to supremacy. Let's begin.
Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The armored transport rattled through the pre-dawn streets of Musutafu, its tinted windows hiding the occupants from curious eyes. Inside, Izuku Midoriya sat perfectly still, wrists bound in quirk suppression cuffs that did absolutely nothing to him. The irony wasn't lost on him. 3 armed HPSC agents filled the cramped space, their fingers never straying far from their sidearms. They'd been briefed, he knew. Told that the 16-year-old boy across from them was responsible for 17 confirmed assassinations, dozens of high-profile thefts, and the systematic dismantling of 3 hero agencies' security systems. The Sorcerer Killer, a ghost story made flesh. "Don't try anything," the lead agent said for the 3rd time. His name was Tanaka, according to the ID badge clipped to his tactical vest. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Izuku didn't bother responding. His green eyes, cold and analytical, tracked the route through the window. They were taking the long way to UA, probably hoping the extra time would intimidate him. It wouldn't. The cursed worm coiled around his torso shifted slightly beneath his black long-sleeve shirt, a comforting weight. The agents had searched him twice, found nothing. They couldn't sense the creature that existed half in this world and half in another, a remnant from a reality where curses and sorcerers were as real as quirks were here. To their scanners, their eyes, their quirks, Izuku was completely empty, a void where a person should be. "You understand the terms, right?" Tanaka continued, trying to fill the silence. "You attend UA, you participate in their curriculum, you help test their security measures. You step out of line even once, and the deal's off. Life in Tartarus." "I understood the first time," Izuku said quietly. His voice was flat, disinterested. "And the second, and the third." The agent's jaw tightened. The woman beside him, Agent Yamamoto, kept her hand on her pistol. The 3rd agent hadn't stopped staring since they'd picked Izuku up from the safe house 3 hours ago. UA, high school, emerged from the morning mist like a fortress. Izuku had cased it twice before, once for a client who wanted dirt on Endeavor, once for a crime lord interested in the school's vault systems. He knew the layout better than most students who'd attended for 3 years. Security cameras in a grid pattern, motion sensors on the outer walls, pro-heroes rotating patrol shifts every 6 hours. It was impressive for a school. The transport pulled through the main gate, past the press vultures camped outside, hoping for a glimpse of All Might's first-year teaching. They'd get a story today, just not the one they expected. Principal Nezu was waiting in the courtyard. The creature, mouse, dog, bear, nobody was quite sure, stood barely 3 feet tall, paws clasped behind his back. His permanent smile didn't reach his too intelligent eyes as the agents escorted Izuku from the vehicle. "Mr. Midoriya," Nezu said pleasantly, "welcome to UA High School. I trust your journey was comfortable?" "It was a journey," Izuku replied. Nezu's smile widened fractionally. "Indeed. Shall we discuss your enrollment? I'm sure you're eager to meet your new classmates." The word classmates tasted like acid in Izuku's mouth, but he nodded. The agents removed his cuffs, useless things, and stepped back. Tanaka looked relieved to have distance between them. Nezu led him into the building, his small legs moving with surprising speed. "Your records have been sanitized, shall we say? As far as anyone here knows, you're a late transfer student with a recommendation from an overseas hero agency. Your quirk is listed as sensory nullification, vague enough to explain your unique properties without raising too many questions. And if someone digs deeper, they won't find anything. I've ensured that. Nezu glanced back, black eyes glittering. I must admit, Mr. Midoriya, you fascinate me. A human with absolutely no quirk factor, yet physical capabilities that exceed most enhancement-type quirks. You're an evolutionary paradox. I'm a survivor, Izuku corrected. Quite. They stopped before a door marked 1A. Voices filtered through, young, energetic, naive. Your classmates are spirited. Many come from privileged backgrounds. They've been training to be heroes since childhood, raised on stories of glory and justice. Sheltered, you mean. Perspective is everything. Nezu's paw rested on the door handle. A word of advice, Mr. Midoriya. These students are not your enemies. They're children playing at a game they don't fully understand yet. Try not to break too many of them. Before Izuku could respond, Nezu opened the door. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward him. The classroom fell silent, conversations cutting off mid-sentence. Izuku stepped inside, hands in his pockets, expression carefully neutral. He swept the room with a practiced glance, cataloging threats, weaknesses, potential problems. Front row, a boy with engines in his legs, sitting ramrod straight. Ida Tenya from the hero family. Uptight, rule-oriented, probably already planning to report Izuku for his slouching posture. Beside him, a girl with brown hair and pink cheeks. Uraraka Ochako. Zero gravity quirk, combat inexperience written all over her body language, not a threat. Back corner, heterochromatic eyes tracked him with cool assessment. Todoroki Shoto, half cold, half hot. Endeavor's masterpiece, powerful, but rigid, predictable. And there, near the window, glaring with barely contained fury, you. Bakugo Katsuki's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He stood abruptly, desk scraping against the floor. Explosion sparks popped from his palms. The fuck are you doing here? Izuku met his eyes without flinching. They had history, brief, violent history from when they were 4 years old, and Bakugo had led a group of kids in tormenting the hollow boy who registered as nothing on quirk scanners. Izuku had broken Bakugo's nose with a rock before running away. It was one of his earliest memories. Sitting down, apparently, Izuku said, moving toward an empty desk. Like hell you are. Bakugo's hand shot forward, explosions building. You're that freak who... Mr. Bakugo. The voice was tired, resigned, a yellow sleeping bag in the corner unzipped, revealing a disheveled man with bloodshot eyes and a capture weapon around his neck. Aizawa Shota, underground hero Eraserhead. Sit down. Bakugo's glare could have melted steel, but he sat, slowly. His eyes never left Izuku. Aizawa extracted himself from the sleeping bag with the enthusiasm of a man being dragged to his own execution. His gaze settled on Izuku, analytical and suspicious. You're the transfer student. That's what they tell me. Midoriya Izuku, quirk, sensory nullification. Aizawa's eyes flashed red, his capture weapon floating slightly. His erasure quirk activated and did absolutely nothing. Izuku felt no different. He never did. Interesting. Your quirk doesn't seem to have an off switch. It's passive, Izuku lied smoothly. Can't control it. Aizawa didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. Take your seat. We have training today. Izuku chose a desk near the back, away from the clusters of chattering students. A boy with purple hair, Shinso, if Izuku remembered the roster correctly, sat nearby, looking equally disinterested in socializing. All right, listen up, Aizawa said, his tone suggesting he'd rather be anywhere else. Today, we're doing quirk assessment tests. I need to see what you're all capable of. Groans erupted from the class. A pink-skinned girl raised her hand. But sensei, what about the entrance ceremony? The orientation? Waste of time. Heroes don't have time for ceremony. Villains don't wait for you to be ready. His gaze swept the room. Bakugo, you placed first in the entrance exam. What was your best softball throw in middle school? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk. They moved to the training grounds, a massive facility with various testing stations. Izuku hung back, watching as students showed off their abilities. Bakugo hurled the softball with an explosion that sent it rocketing into the sky, 705.2 meters. The class cheered, impressed. Fools. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice cut through his thoughts. You're up. Izuku caught the softball, felt its weight. The class watched with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Bakugo's sneer was particularly pronounced. His quirk's defensive, someone whispered. Can he even? Izuku wound up and threw. His shoulder rotated with perfect biomechanics, muscles honed by years of survival, releasing energy in a precisely calculated arc. The ball left his hand at supersonic speed, creating a small sonic boom that made several students stumble back. It disappeared into the distance, a white streak against the blue sky. Aizawa's device beeped. 723.4 meters. Silence. That's impossible, Ida said, glasses glinting. Without an enhancement quirk? Who said I used my quirk? Izuku returned to the group, ignoring the stares. His quirk was listed as sensory-based, not physical enhancement. Let them wonder. The tests continued. 50-meter dash. Izuku clocked in at 2.1 seconds, faster than most speedster-type quirks. Grip strength, he crushed the device's upper limit. Standing long jump, cleared the entire sandbox. Repeated sidesteps moved too fast for some students to track. By the end, he'd placed first in 7 of 8 events, second only to Todoroki in the endurance run. And only because Izuku had deliberately held back to avoid suspicion, Aizawa's expression grew more troubled with each result. All of you passed, the teacher said finally, much to the class's relief. But some of you are clearly holding back. Don't think I haven't noticed. His eyes lingered on Izuku. Dismissed. Midoriya, stay behind. The other students filed out, casting curious glances back. Bakugo looked like he wanted to say something, but a sharp gesture from Aizawa sent him on his way. When they were alone, Aizawa crossed his arms. I read your file. Or rather, I read the sanitized version Nezu gave me. Want to tell me what it's really hiding? Not particularly. Listen, kid, I don't know what deal you made with Nezu, but I'm responsible for these students. If you're dangerous... I am dangerous. Izuku interrupted. So are you. So is everyone with a quirk. The question is whether I'm dangerous to your students. And are you? Izuku considered. The honest answer was complicated. He had no interest in hurting children, even sheltered ones, playing at heroism. But if they got in his way, if they became obstacles... Not unless they give me a reason to be, he said finally. Aizawa studied him for a long moment. I'll be watching you, Midoriya. One wrong move, and I don't care what arrangement you have with Nezu, I'll take you down myself. You could try. The underground hero's eyes flashed red again, capture weapon tensing. For a moment, the air between them thrummed with potential violence. Then Aizawa exhaled, dismissing his quirk. Get out of here, and don't make me regret not expelling you on day 1. Izuku left without another word. The next few days established a pattern. Classes were tedious. History he'd learned surviving on the streets, ethics that made him want to laugh, hero theory that assumed everyone played by the same rules. He attended because it was required, sat in the back, and counted the minutes until he could leave. His classmates gave him a wide berth. Some, like Ida and Uraraka, tried to be friendly. He shut them down with monosyllabic responses and cold stares. Others, like Todoroki, watched him with wary assessment. Recognizing a predator in their midst, Bakugo was a constant source of hostility. He'd cornered Izuku after class on the 3rd day, explosions popping. I know you're not some late transfer, Bakugo snarled. I remember you, that hollow-eyed freak from elementary. You think you can just show up here, pretend to be... Izuku moved. One moment he was 3 feet away, the next his hand was wrapped around Bakugo's wrist, twisting it at an angle that made the explosive boy gasp. The motion was too fast to see, too smooth to counter. Touch me again, Izuku said quietly, and I'll break every bone in your hand. Slowly? Do we understand each other? Bakugo's red eyes widened, not with fear but with rage and something else. Recognition, perhaps, of the gap between them. Izuku released him and walked away. Bakugo didn't follow. The incident spread through the class like wildfire. Midoriya Izuku, the transfer student with the sensory nullification quirk, had casually subdued Bakugo Katsuki, the student who'd scored first in the entrance exam. Theories proliferated. Debates raged. Izuku ignored them all. On the 5th day, Aizawa announced they'd be doing rescue training at an off-campus facility called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. This is a critical part of hero work, Aizawa explained, looking even more exhausted than usual. Saving people is as important as fighting villains, maybe more so. The Hero 13 will be instructing you. Izuku had heard of 13. Rescue specialist, black hole quirk, genuinely competent at their niche. The USJ facility was a massive dome containing different disaster zones: shipwreck, landslide, fire, flood, ruins. Impressive engineering, the class loaded onto a bus. excitement palpable. Izuku took a seat alone, watching the city roll past. The cursed worm shifted against his skin, sensing his readiness. Today felt different. Wrong, his instincts, honed by years of hunting and being hunted, were screaming. They arrived at the USJ. 13 greeted them in the entrance plaza, enthusiastic about teaching rescue techniques. The dome stretched above them, simulated disaster zones visible in the distance. 20 students clustered around the hero, listening with varying degrees of attention. Izuku hung back, eyes scanning. The facility was too quiet. Security should be tighter for a class trip. Where were the other heroes? Why was Aizawa's hand already on his capture weapon, his posture tense? Then the air in the center of the plaza warped. Purple-black mist spiraled outward, coalescing into a gateway. Figures emerged, dozens of them, dressed in street clothes and masks. Villains, real villains, not the training dummies or simulation students expected. What the? Kirishima started. Stay back! Aizawa's capture weapon whipped out, his eyes flashing red. 13, protect the students! More figures emerged from the portal. A man with hands covering his body, scratching at his neck. Shigaraki Tomura. Izuku recognized him from Underworld Whispers. Dangerous, unstable, backed by someone with serious resources. The misty portal itself spoke, voice deep and refined. Greetings, UA students. We are the League of Villains. We've come to kill All Might. Panic rippled through the class. Several students activated their quirks defensively. 13 moved to shield them. Aizawa charged forward, engaging the first wave of villains with brutal efficiency, his capture weapon binding 2 at once while he kicked a third in the face. Izuku sighed. Midoriya? Uraraka's voice shook. What do we? Be quiet, Izuku said, not unkindly. He was calculating. 32 villains visible, probably more in reserve. The portal user was the key. Take him out, cut off their escape and reinforcements. Shigaraki was the leader, but not the real threat. Something else was here, something big. The mist villain, Kurogiri, expanded his portal. Now we've come prepared. Each of you will be scattered across the facility and killed. Let's begin. The portal swept toward the students. 13 activated their black hole quirk, but Kurogiri split his warp gate, redirecting the suction. Students were pulled in, screaming, separated into different disaster zones. Izuku let himself be taken. He materialized in the ruin zone, concrete debris and collapsed buildings surrounding him. 6 villains were waiting, confident grins on their faces. Well, well, one said, cracking his knuckles. Just one? This'll be. Izuku reached under his shirt. The cursed worm's mouth opened, dimensional storage accessible only to him. His hand emerged holding a simple combat knife. Then he moved. The first villain died before he finished his sentence, throat opened in a precise slash that severed the carotid artery. Blood sprayed. It was already past him, driving the knife into the second villain's kidney, twisting, pulling out. The man crumpled. Holy shit. Izuku's foot caught the third in the solar plexus, stopping his heart for 3 critical seconds. While that one fell, gasping, Izuku hurled the knife into the fourth villain's eye. It punched through, buried to the hilt. The man screamed once before collapsing. 5 seconds. 4 bodies. The remaining 2 villains stumbled back, quirks activating in panic. One's arms morphed into blades, the other exhaled toxic gas. Izuku reached into the worm again. This time, he pulled out a handgun, a Glock 19, suppressor attached. 2 shots, both headshots. The blade-armed villain's forehead sprouted a neat hole. The gas breather fell backwards, skull fragments scattering. Silence returned to the ruin zone. 6 corpses. 10 seconds. Izuku holstered the gun, retrieving his knife from the dead man's eye socket. The blade came free with a wet sound. He wiped it clean on the corpse's shirt, expression unchanged. No hesitation, no remorse. These were obstacles, and he'd cleared them. He sprinted toward the central plaza, moving through the ruins with practiced parkour. His body flowed over obstacles, around corners, across gaps. The cursed worm coiled tighter, ready to produce whatever weapon he needed. In the flood zone, he could hear Asui's voice. She was fine, handling her group. In the landslide zone, explosions echoed, Bakugo making noise as always. The others were managing. They weren't his concern. Aizawa was. The underground hero was surrounded in the central plaza, capture weapon tangled around multiple villains. He was good, eliminating quirks, using combat techniques to compensate for numbers. But he was tiring, blood running from a cut above his eye. Shigaraki watched from the sidelines, scratching his neck. You're strong for a teacher. but you can't erase what you can't see. Something massive moved in the shadows near the central fountain. Izuku's instincts screamed. He pushed harder, legs blurring. The creature that emerged made several students scream. It was grotesque. Muscle fibers exposed, brain visible through transparent skin, beak-like mouth, dead eyes. A Nomu, the underworld called them. Biological weapons created through some horrific quirk fusion process. This one was huge, easily 9 feet tall, radiating power. Nomu, Shigaraki said cheerfully. Kill the erasure hero. The creature moved faster than something that size should. Aizawa barely dodged, but the Nomu's fist caught him in the ribs. The sound of cracking bone echoed. Aizawa flew backward, crashing into rubble. Sensei! Izuku heard Ida's voice from somewhere. Good, the kid was running for help. The Nomu advanced on Aizawa's prone form. Shigaraki giggled. Kurogiri observed impassively. Izuku dropped into the plaza. He landed in a crouch, perfectly silent, between the Nomu and Aizawa. His presence, or lack thereof, made him invisible to quirk-based senses. The Nomu didn't register him. Shigaraki didn't notice him. Kurogiri's portal sense couldn't detect him. Izuku reached into the cursed worm and pulled out his prized weapon. The inverted spear of heaven materialized in his hand, a long, ornate blade wrapped in cloth, its metal a dull gray that seemed to absorb light. The weapon was a relic from another world, a tool designed to sever the connection between ability and user. Hey, Izuku said. Shigaraki's head snapped toward him. His red eyes widened behind the hand covering his face. Who? How did you? Izuku blurred forward. The Nomu's fist came down like a hammer. Izuku sidestepped with millimeters to spare, the impact cratering the ground where he'd stood. His blade came up in a precise arc, slashing across the creature's exposed arm. The inverted spear's effect was immediate. Where it cut, quirks stopped functioning. The Nomu's regeneration quirk shut down for a crucial 5 seconds. The wound Izuku had opened stayed open, black blood pouring out. The creature bellowed, swinging wildly. Izuku ducked under the blow, pivoted, and drove the spear into its knee. More quirks nullified. Shock absorption failed. The joint shattered under the Nomu's own weight. Wait. What the fuck? Shigaraki scratched harder at his neck. Kurogiri, get him! The mist villain expanded toward Izuku, warp gates opening to swallow him. Izuku pulled a flashbang from the cursed worm and threw it into the portal. The device detonated inside Kurogiri's mist body. The villain shrieked, form destabilizing. Izuku pressed his advantage on the Nomu. The creature was powerful, multiple quirks enhancing its strength, durability, regeneration. But it was mindless, predictable. It threw punches. Izuku was already moving, reading the trajectory before the fist even launched. He scaled the Nomu's arm, running up its bicep, blade flashing. Precise cuts severed muscle groups. The inverted spear nullified healing. The Nomu couldn't adapt, couldn't compensate. It was being systematically dismantled. Izuku reached into the worm again. This time, he pulled out the split soul katana. The blade was beautiful and terrible, curved steel that gleamed with an inner light, etched with symbols that hurt to look at directly. This weapon didn't cut flesh. It cut deeper. It severed the connection between body and essence, dealing damage that transcended physical healing. He drove it into the Nomu's exposed brain. The creature seized, every muscle locking. The split soul katana's curse spread through its nervous system, cutting not the tissue, but the animating force within. The Nomu's quirks, all of them, flickered and died. Its regeneration couldn't repair damage to its fundamental existence. Izuku twisted the blade. The Nomu collapsed, 9 feet of bioengineered muscle crashing down like a felled tree. Impossible, Shigaraki breathed. Izuku landed lightly, both blades held ready. Black blood dripped from the split soul katana, evaporating into mist before hitting the ground. He turned to face Shigaraki and Kurogiri, expression flat. "You talk too much," he said. Then he vanished. Superhuman speed carried him across the plaza in a heartbeat. Shigaraki jerked back, four-fingered hands coming up in defense. Izuku's blade was already at his throat, the inverted spear pressed against pale skin right above the jugular. "Move and you die," Izuku said quietly. Shigaraki froze. Behind the hand covering his face, his visible eye was wide with something approaching fear. This close, Izuku could see he was young, early 20s at most, with cracked lips and scars from constant scratching. "You're fast," Shigaraki rasped, "but Sensei will." "I don't care about your Sensei." The blade pressed harder, drawing a bead of blood. "You came here to kill All Might. You failed, you lost your toy. He gestured at the fallen Nomu. Cut your losses. Leave. Shigaraki? Kurogiri's voice was strained, his form still destabilized from the flashbang. We should retreat. Shigaraki's eye darted around, at the Nomu corpse, at Aizawa struggling to stand, at the students beginning to emerge from the disaster zones. At Izuku, this unknown element who'd appeared from nowhere and shredded their plan. This isn't over, Shigaraki hissed. It is for today. Izuku stepped back, lowering the blade fractionally. But if you want to try again, I'll be waiting. Next time I won't let you talk at all. Purple-black mist swirled around Shigaraki and Kurogiri. The portal opened beneath them. As they sank into it, Shigaraki's voice echoed. Who are you? Nobody important, Izuku said. The portal closed. The remaining villains, seeing their leaders flee, scattered. Some tried to run for the entrance. Others activated quirks in desperate attempts to escape. Izuku let them go. They weren't worth the effort. The plaza fell silent except for the groans of injured villains and the distant sound of sirens. Pro-heroes were arriving, late, as always. Izuku returned his weapons to the cursed worm's storage. The creature coiled contentedly, satisfied with the violence. He walked toward Aizawa, who was clutching his ribs, blood staining his capture weapon. You killed them, Aizawa said. Not accusatory, just stating fact. Those villains in the ruins zone, and the Nomu. Yes. Students don't kill. I'm not a student, Izuku replied. I'm a security consultant testing your defenses. Your defenses failed, villains infiltrated, students were endangered, and you nearly died. He crouched beside the hero. 3 broken ribs, possible concussion, multiple contusions. You should wait for the medics. You, Aizawa coughed, wincing. You're the Sorcerer Killer. It wasn't a question. Izuku didn't confirm or deny. Around them, Class 1A was gathering. Asui from the water, Bakugo from the landslide, others from various zones. They stared at the Nomu's corpse, at the blood, at Izuku standing calmly amid the carnage. Midoriya? Uraraka's voice was small. Was that? I did my job, Izuku said simply. He looked at each of them in turn, their wide eyes, pale faces, trembling hands. Villains don't play by your rules. They don't wait for you to be ready. They come to kill, and if you're not willing to do the same, you die. Remember that. All Might arrived then, smashing through the entrance in a burst of wind and power. The symbol of peace took in the scene. The defeated villains, the fallen Nomu, the injured Aizawa, and Izuku standing at the center of it all. Young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice unusually serious. We need to talk. But Izuku was already walking away, hands in his pockets, done with the conversation. He had a report to write for Nezu. The League of Villains would be back. They always came back. And when they did, he'd be ready. Behind him, Class 1A whispered among themselves, fear and awe mixing in equal measure. They'd come here expecting a training exercise. Instead, they'd learned what real combat looked like, what real stakes felt like. Welcome to the real world, Izuku thought. Hope you survive it. The aftermath of the USJ incident sent shockwaves through UA and the hero community. News coverage ran nonstop. UA attacked by villain organization, symbol of Peace's teaching debut, marred by violence, mystery student defeats League of Villains. Izuku sat in Principal Nezu's office, ignoring the tea offered to him. The small creature regarded him with keen eyes, that permanent smile somehow more knowing than before. You killed 6 villains and 1 Nomu, Nezu said, rather decisively, according to the reports. They were trying to kill students. Indeed. The Hero Public Safety Commission is conflicted. On one hand, you protected students and faculty. On the other, the use of lethal force is not typically sanctioned for hero students. Nezu sipped his tea. Fortunately, your status as a security consultant provides certain legal protections. How convenient. Quite. However, this does complicate matters. Nezu pulled up a holographic display showing news feeds, social media posts, underground network chatter. The Sorcerer Killer's presence at UA is now confirmed. Various parties are taking interest. The HPSC wants tighter restrictions on you. The hero community is divided, and the criminal underworld. He gestured at encrypted messages. Well, you've made quite an impression. Izuku scanned the messages. Bounties on his head had tripled. Some crime lords wanted him dead. Others wanted to hire him. One message, unsigned, simply read, "Impressive. We should meet." All for one, Izuku said quietly. You recognize the style. Nezu's ears twitched. The man behind the League of Villains, most likely. Incredibly dangerous. I would advise extreme caution. I don't take advice. No, I don't suppose you do. Nezu closed the display. Regardless, your performance at the USJ has accelerated certain plans. The UA Sports Festival will proceed as scheduled in 2 weeks. You will participate. Why? Because the world needs to see that UA remains strong despite this attack. Because your classmates need to learn from facing you. And because, frankly, I'm curious to see what you'll do when forced to operate within rules rather than around them. Izuku considered. The sports festival was a massive televised event, broadcast worldwide. Every hero agency watched, every villain organization too. It was a stage, and stages had uses. Fine, he said, but I won't hold back. I wouldn't dream of asking you to. 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. School continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Class 1A treated Izuku differently now, not with friendship, but with a wary respect born from seeing him fight. They'd witnessed him dismantle the League of Villains with clinical efficiency, watched him kill without hesitation. Some, like Ida and Uraraka, still tried to bridge the gap. Midoriya, about the USJ, thank you for protecting us. Izuku ignored them. Others, like Todoroki, observed from a distance. The heterochromatic boy watched Izuku during training with the focus of someone studying a threat. Bakugo was the worst. He'd been in the landslide zone during the attack, fighting his own group of villains. By the time he'd reached the plaza, it was over. The knowledge that Izuku had handled the real threat while he'd been occupied with small fry ate at him. "Fight me," Bakugo demanded one day after class, explosions popping from his palms. No. Scared? Bored. Izuku didn't look up from the file he was reading. Villain organizations operating in Musutafu, potential threats, possible contracts once his UA sentence ended. Bakugo's hands slammed on the desk. You think you're better than everyone here? You think killing some D-list villains makes you hot shit? Izuku finally looked at him. His green eyes were cold, empty. I think you're loud, predictable, and out of your depth. You want to be the best? Fine. But you're not competing with me, Bakugo. You're competing with the version of yourself that doesn't get his classmates killed because he charged in screaming. The explosive boy's face went red. You. Fight smart or die stupid. Your choice. Izuku returned to his reading. Bakugo stormed off, but the words lingered. Several students had heard. Some looked thoughtful. Others looked angry. Good. Anger could be useful if channeled correctly. Aizawa's teaching style shifted subtly after the USJ. His combat training became more intense, scenarios more realistic. He pushed the students harder, demanded more. And he watched Izuku constantly, looking for cracks in the facade. He wouldn't find any. The day of the sports festival arrived with fanfare and spectacle. The stadium was packed. 50,000 spectators, cameras everywhere, pro heroes in VIP boxes. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Izuku stood with Class 1A in the tunnel leading to the arena, listening to Present Mike's amplified voice introducing the event. His classmates were nervous, excited, determined. Children playing dress-up, competing for the approval of adults who'd never fought a real battle. Representing the first-year students, Present Mike announced, Class 1A's Bakugo Katsuki will give the pledge. Bakugo strutted to the microphone, confidence radiating. I just want to say, I'm gonna win. Boos erupted from the other classes. Izuku almost smiled. At least Bakugo was honest about his intentions. The first event was announced, an obstacle race through a 4-kilometer course filled with traps, robots, and hazards. All participating students would start together, a chaotic melee designed to thin the herd quickly. Begin! The mass of students surged forward, bottlenecking at the entrance. Quirks activated in a desperate rush. Ice, explosions, acid, tape, anything to gain an edge. Todoroki made an early move, freezing the ground behind him to trip pursuers. Izuku walked. Not ran. Walked. He waited for the bottleneck to clear, for the desperate students to exhaust themselves fighting for position. Patience was a weapon most didn't know how to use. When the path opened, he moved. Superhuman speed carried him past the stragglers in seconds. He caught up to the leading pack, Todoroki, Bakugo, a few others, just as they reached the first obstacle. Massive robots from the entrance exam, repurposed as barriers. Students scattered, using quirks to navigate around or through. Todoroki froze several robots solid. Bakugo blasted past with explosions. Others struggled, fell back. Izuku ran up a tilting robot's arm, using its frozen joints as handholds. At the apex, he jumped, clearing 30 feet to land on the next robot's head. Another jump, another platform. He moved through the mechanical forest like a parkour artist, never slowing. A robot's fist swung at him. Izuku ducked under, pulled a small blade from the cursed worm, and sliced through the hydraulic cable controlling the joint. The arm fell limp. He was already past. The second obstacle was a massive chasm crossed by tight ropes and unstable platforms. Students with flight or mobility quirks had advantages here. Others had to navigate carefully or fall into the pit below. Izuku sprinted across a tightrope at full speed, balance perfect, never wavering. Other students gawked. That should be impossible without a quirk-enhancing coordination. It would be. For them, the third obstacle was a minefield. Pressure-activated explosives buried in the ground, marked by barely visible discolorations in the dirt. Most students slowed drastically, picking their way through. Izuku's enhanced perception mapped the field in seconds. He saw the patterns, the safe paths, the optimal route. He ran through at full speed, feet landing only on safe ground, never triggering a single mine. Incredible. Present Mike's voice boomed. Mystery student Midoriya Izuku is closing the gap on our leaders using pure speed and skill. Izuku emerged from the minefield in third place, behind Todoroki and Bakugo. The finish line was ahead. All three accelerated. Bakugo glanced back, saw Izuku gaining, and unleashed a massive explosion to propel himself forward. Todoroki created an ice ramp, sliding ahead. Izuku pushed harder, his legs blurred, muscles burning with exertion that would cripple normal humans. The world narrowed to the finish line. The competitors, the goal. He crossed in second place, 0.3 seconds behind Todoroki. The crowd erupted. Bakugo came in third, furious at being beaten. The rest of Class 1A trickled in over the next few minutes, exhausted but relieved to qualify for the next round. The top 42 students advanced to the next event. Present Mike announced. It's the cavalry battle. Izuku listened to the rules with half his attention. Teams of 2 to 4 students, one rider, others as horses. Headbands worth points based on placement. His second place finish earned him a headband worth 200 points. First place, Todoroki, was worth 10 million points. Everyone would target Todoroki. Smart. You have 15 minutes to form teams. Begin! Chaos erupted as students scrambled to recruit teammates. Izuku stood apart, watching. Several students approached him nervously. Midoriya, want to team up? Uraraka asked hopefully. No, but we could. You'd slow me down. She flinched. Ida tried next, offering efficient teamwork and coordination. Izuku declined. Others approached with similar results. Bakugo predictably tried to recruit strong teammates. Kirishima, Sero, Ashido. They formed a team aimed at the 10 million point headband. Todoroki recruited strategically. Ida for mobility, Kaminari for offense, Yaoyorozu for versatility. The dream team. Izuku checked the time. 10 minutes left. He could participate solo, but the rules required a team structure. Annoying. Midoriya. A quiet voice. Shinso Hitoshi, the purple-haired student from General Studies who'd qualified for the tournament. Team up with me. Why? Because everyone's avoiding me. My quirk scares them. Shinso's expression was bitter. And you don't look like you scare easy. Izuku considered. Shinso's brainwashing quirk was potent. Anyone who responded verbally to his questions fell under his control. Useful, if limited. Fine, but we do things my way. Deal. They recruited 2 more out of necessity, a student with a binding quirk and another with enhanced strength. Both were nervous, clearly aware they'd drawn the short straw, partnering with the Sorcerer Killer. The cavalry battle began with organized chaos. 12 teams charged across the arena, targeting either each other or the high-value Todoroki team. Strategies collided, quirks flashed, headbands changed hands rapidly. Izuku's team moved differently. While others rushed forward, he directed them to circle the perimeter, staying out of the initial melee. Patience. Let them exhaust themselves. Shouldn't we attack? One teammate asked nervously. Not yet. Shinso used his quirk when other teams got close, brainwashing riders and stealing headbands with minimal effort. The binding quirk user trapped opponents. The strength-based student handled defense. Izuku navigated, directed, and, when necessary, struck. A team led by Monoma from Class 1B tried to corner them. Monoma's copy quirk let him mimic others' abilities temporarily. He'd copied several mobility quirks and was confident. Got you now. Monoma grinned. Your quirk is useless for offense, Midoriya. Hand over those. Izuku's fist caught him in the solar plexus. No quirk, just a perfectly placed strike that folded Monoma like paper. While the Class 1B student gasped for air, Shinso brainwashed his teammates and Izuku stole their headbands. What the hell? Monoma wheezed. Lesson 1, Izuku said. Never assume your opponent needs a quirk to hurt you. They moved on, leaving Monoma's team in the dust. The battlefield narrowed. Teams were eliminated one by one. With 3 minutes left, only 4 teams remained in contention. Todoroki's with the 10 million point headband, Bakugo's team closing in, a team from Class 1B, and Izuku's team with a respectable point total. Todoroki's team was the obvious target. Everyone converged. Bakugo reached them first, explosions blazing. That 10 million is mine, half and half! Todoroki responded with walls of ice blocking Bakugo's approach. Kaminari discharged electricity, forcing Bakugo's team back. Yaoyorozu created an insulated sheet to protect against further electrical attacks. The Class 1B team tried to flank, but got caught between Bakugo's aggression and Todoroki's defense. They were eliminated quickly. 2 minutes left. Izuku made his move. Get me close? He told his team. They charged toward Todoroki's fortress of ice. Ida's engines fired, trying to outrun them. Izuku calculated angles, speeds, trajectories. When they were 20 feet away, he jumped. His leap carried him clear over the ice walls, arcing through the air toward Todoroki's team. Todoroki's eyes widened. He'd been focused on Bakugo, hadn't expected an aerial approach. Ice erupted upward to intercept. Izuku twisted in midair, pulled the chain of 1,000 miles from the cursed worm and whipped it forward. The chain wrapped around a structural support in the stadium ceiling, and he used it to change direction. Swinging around the ice like a pendulum, he released the chain, trajectory adjusted, and dropped toward Todoroki. Kaminari tried to shock him. Electricity arced up. Izuku pulled a rubber-coated knife from the cursed worm and threw it into Kaminari's shoulder. Non-lethal, but enough to disrupt his quirk's aim. Yaoyorozu created a net. Izuku cut through it with a blade mid-fall. Todoroki's hands came up, ice and fire both activating for the first time in the festival. Desperation move. Izuku's hand shot out, fingers closing around the 10 million point headband. Todoroki's fire erupted, heat seared the air. The crowd gasped. Izuku had already kicked off Todoroki's shoulder, backflipping away with the headband in hand. He landed on his original team's formation as the timer hit 0. Time's up? Present Mike's voice echoed through the stunned silence. And in a last-second reversal, Midoriya Izuku's team steals the 10 million point headband. They take first place. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half confused. On the field, Todoroki stared at his empty hands, ice and fire still flickering. Bakugo screamed incoherently, explosions popping. Izuku handed the headband to Shinso. Good work. His teammates looked shell-shocked. They just won by partnering with the student everyone feared. The tournament bracket was announced. 16 students advanced to the final round. One-on-one fights broadcast live to the world. Izuku's first match versus Shinso Hitoshi, his second potential match versus Todoroki Shoto. Finals, likely against Bakugo or Tokoyami. He didn't care who he faced. They would all fall the same way. The one-on-one tournament began after a brief intermission. The arena was reconfigured. A flat concrete platform, no cover, no terrain advantages. Pure combat. Izuku watched the early matches with detached interest. Midoriya versus Shinso was the third fight of the first round. Uraraka versus Bakugo went first. The girl fought valiantly, using her zero-gravity quirk to maneuver debris and create a meteor shower attack. Bakugo blasted through everything, won decisively, but showed more respect than expected. Growth? Perhaps. Todoroki versus Sero was second. An ice glacier ended the fight in seconds. Overwhelming power, but wasteful. Todoroki was still refusing to use his fire side, handicapping himself out of spite for his father. Then it was Izuku's turn. He walked onto the platform to mixed reactions. Cheers from those impressed by his performance, boos from those who'd heard rumors about the USJ, confused murmurs from those who didn't understand how a sensory nullification quirk translated to combat prowess. Shinso was waiting, expression carefully neutral. No hard feelings about this? None. Do your best. Present Mike's voice boomed. This match is between two dark horses. Midoriya Izuku from the Hero Course with his mysterious quirk versus Shinso Hitoshi from General Studies with his infamous brainwashing ability. Who will advance? Begin. Shinso opened his mouth to speak, to ask a question that would trigger his quirk if Izuku responded. Izuku blurred forward. He crossed the distance in a fraction of a second, too fast for Shinso to react. His hand pressed against Shinso's chest, not striking, just holding him in place. Your quirk is dangerous, Izuku said quietly, voice too low for the microphones. But it has two weaknesses. One, it requires verbal response. Two, it can't activate if your opponent is too close for you to speak safely. Shinsu tried to activate his quirk anyway, mouth opening. Izuku's other hand covered it, gentle but firm. I could kill you right now. 12 ways. Instead, I'm going to give you advice. Izuku's green eyes held Shinso's purple ones. You rely too much on your quirk. Learn hand-to-hand combat. Study psychology to manipulate opponents into talking. Train your body so you can survive when your quirk fails. Then you'll be truly dangerous. He released Shinso and stepped back. Shinso stumbled, confused. Midoriya is the winner, Present Mick announced, equally confused. That was quick? Izuku left the platform without fanfare. Shinso stood there, processing the strangest fight of his life. No brutality, no humiliation. Just a lesson. The matches continued. Ida lost to Todoroki in a fight of speed versus ice. Tokoyami's dark shadow overwhelmed Momo until she created a flashlight and exploited its weakness to light. Bakugo advanced past Kirishima in an explosion-filled brawl. Round 2 pairings were announced. Izuku versus Todoroki. This was the match everyone wanted to see. They took the platform as the sun began setting, stadium lights illuminating the arena. Todoroki's expression was cold, determined. He'd been analyzing Izuku's fighting style, looking for weaknesses. You're strong, Todoroki said, but you haven't faced my full power yet. You haven't used your full power yet. Izuku corrected. You're still refusing your fire side. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. That's none of your business. It is when it makes you predictable. Izuku reached under his shirt. The cursed worm's storage opened. You'll use ice because it's all you think you need. You'll create distance, freeze the arena, try to overwhelm me with volume. It won't work. Confident. Realistic. Present Mike's voice echoed, Begin. Todoroki's right side erupted with ice, massive glacial constructs that covered the platform in seconds, jagged spires reaching for the sky. The crowd gasped at the scale. It was the same technique that had defeated Sero instantly. Izuku pulled the inverted spear of heaven from storage. The ornate blade gleamed under the stadium lights. He charged forward, blade held low. Ice spears launched toward him, each one capable of impaling a grown man. The inverted spear cut through them like paper. Every swing severed the connection between Todoroki's quirk and the ice structures. They shattered instantly, rendered into mundane frozen water without the quirk energy sustaining them. Izuku carved a path through the glacier, moving steadily toward Todoroki. What? Todoroki created more ice, thicker walls, denser formations. All fell before the nullifying blade. Izuku closed the distance. 15 feet. 10. 5. Todoroki's left side ignited. Fire erupted from his body, the heat intense enough to melt his own ice. Flames shaped into a barrier between them. Finally, Izuku said, he switched weapons, returning the inverted spear to storage and drawing the split soul katana. The cursed blade's edge gleamed. Izuku swung it through the fire. The flames parted, not because the blade cut fire, because it cut the connection between Todoroki's quirk and its manifestation, disrupting the flow of power for a crucial instant. The gap was enough. Izuku stepped through, blade at Todoroki's throat. You lose, he said simply. Todoroki froze, literally and figuratively. Ice crept across the platform from his right side. Fire flickered from his left, both useless with that blade pressed against his carotid artery. I can't. Todoroki's voice was strained. You can. You're just too stubborn. Izuku's tone was flat, matter of fact. You handicap yourself because you hate your father. That's weakness. That's choosing to be less than you are out of spite. In the real world, that gets you killed. You don't understand. I don't care. The blade pressed closer, not cutting, just emphasizing. Your father is trash. Fine. Don't let trash dictate who you become. Use every tool you have, or die, knowing you could have been better. Midnight's voice crackled over the speakers. Todoroki is immobilized. Midoriya wins. Izuku withdrew the blade, returning it to storage. Todoroki sank to his knees, ice and fire both dying out. The stadium was silent, processing what they'd witnessed. Izuku walked away. Behind him, Todoroki's hands clenched into fists. Something in his expression shifted. Realization, perhaps, or the first crack in years of self-imposed limitations. The semifinals were set. Izuku versus Ida, Bakugo versus Tokoyami. Ida's match was respectful but brief. The engine-legged student was fast, but Izuku was faster. When Ida charged with Recipro Burst, Izuku sidestepped with millimeters to spare and struck a pressure point that shut down the engines temporarily. Ida fell, unable to continue. Bakugo demolished Tokoyami by creating explosions bright enough to weaken Dark Shadow, then overwhelming the bird-headed student with relentless aggression. The finals, Midoriya Izuku versus Bakugo Katsuki. The crowd roared. This was the matchup they wanted. The mysterious transfer student versus the aggressive prodigy. Childhood acquaintances with obvious animosity, Bakugo stomped onto the platform, explosions already popping from his palms. No more running, you hollow-eyed bastard. I'm gonna blast you into next week and prove I'm the strongest. Izuku regarded him coolly. You're going to lose. Like hell I am. Begin. Bakugo launched forward with explosive propulsion, closing distance fast. His combat style was refined compared to the USJ. He'd learned from fighting Uraraka, become more tactical. Explosions created smokescreen, masked approach angles, disrupted enemy positioning. Against most opponents, it would work. Izuku wasn't most opponents. He tracked Bakugo through the smoke by sound and air displacement, predicted the attack trajectory, and moved before the explosive boy even committed. Bakugo's fist screamed past his head, detonating empty air. Izuku's counter was immediate, a palm strike to Bakugo's elbow that hyperextended the joint. Bakugo snarled, twisted, brought his other hand around in a point-blank explosion. The blast was powerful enough to crater concrete. Izuku had already dropped low, sweeping Bakugo's legs out from under him. The explosive boy hit the ground hard, rolled, came up firing. Explosions stitched across the platform. Izuku wove between them, movements minimal and efficient. He was reading Bakugo's patterns, the slight tells before each detonation, shifted weight, tensed shoulders, direction of sweat secretion. Stop dodging and fight! Bakugo roared, frustration mounting. Izuku reached into the cursed worm and pulled out the chain of 1,000 miles. The weapon uncoiled, supernaturally flexible metal links flowing like water. Izuku whipped it forward. The chain wrapped around Bakugo's right arm before he could detonate. Bakugo tried to explode free. The chain held, its cursed nature resisting quirk-based destruction. Izuku yanked, pulling Bakugo off balance, then swung the chain like a flail. Bakugo was slammed into the concrete, air blasting from his lungs. Before he could recover, Izuku was on him. Knee on chest, chain wrapped around throat, not choking, but immobilizing. You're predictable, Izuku said quietly. You lead with your right hand. You favor explosive power over precision. You get angry when things don't go your way, and anger makes you sloppy. Bakugo struggled, explosions firing wildly. None hit Izuku, who adjusted position fractionally to avoid each one. In a real fight, I'd have killed you in the first exchange. Knife to the throat while you were committed to that opening explosion. Izuku's tone was instructive, almost conversational. You're strong, Bakugo. Top 5 in this year's class easily, but strength without discipline is just noise. Shut up, Bakugo gasped, face red with exertion and rage. Make me. Bakugo's eyes widened. Then, for the first time in the match, he smiled, feral and vicious. His palms pressed against the ground beneath him. The explosion was massive, detonating downward with all of Bakugo's remaining power. The platform cracked, chunks of concrete flying upward. Both fighters were launched into the air. Bakugo twisted, using smaller explosions to orient himself, and fired a devastating blast at point-blank range while they were both airborne. Izuku released the chain, pulled a flashbang from the cursed worm, and threw it into Bakugo's face. The device detonated mid-air, blinding and deafening at close range. Bakugo's blast went wide. Izuku used the chain of 1,000 miles to grab a support beam in the stadium structure, half swinging himself clear. He landed lightly on the edge of the platform. Bakugo crashed down hard, disoriented, ears ringing. He tried to stand, stumbled. Winner. Midoriya Izuku. The crowd went wild. Bakugo punched the ground, screaming in frustration. He'd given everything, used every technique, fought with all his skill and power. It hadn't been enough. Izuku returned the chain to storage and walked toward the winner's podium. The sports festival's conclusion was anticlimactic for him. All Might presented medals, gave a speech about perseverance and growth, smiled that enormous smile that made civilians feel safe. Izuku accepted his gold medal with the same expression he'd maintained all day: cold, detached, unimpressed. The crowd cheered. The cameras flashed. Pro heroes in the VIP boxes made notes, discussed recruitment strategies, analyzed what they'd seen. And in a dark room far from the stadium, a man with no face watched the broadcast with great interest. All for One leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Fascinating. A human with no quirk, no presence, yet capable of defeating quirk users through pure physical capability and mysterious weapons. Should we recruit him, Master? Kurogiri asked, his misty form hovering nearby. Not yet, but watch him. This Sorcerer Killer may prove useful, or he may prove to be a threat that needs elimination. All for One smiled, not though his ruined face made the expression grotesque. Either way, he's far too interesting to ignore. The days following the sports festival were chaotic. Izuku's performance had attracted attention from every sector. Pro heroes wanted to recruit him for internships, villain organizations put out feelers through underworld contacts, news agencies clamored for interviews. Izuku declined everything. He returned to his routine: attend classes, endure the stares, complete Nezu's assigned security assessments, and count down the days until his arrangement with UA ended, and he could return to the shadows where he belonged. But the world had other plans. The hero killer Stain had been active for months, targeting pro heroes he deemed unworthy across multiple cities. His victim count was climbing. 3 dead, 17 injured seriously enough to end their careers. The attacks followed a pattern. Stain observed heroes, selected those he believed were motivated by money or fame rather than justice, and struck with brutal efficiency. His quirk, Blood Curdle, paralyzed anyone whose blood he ingested. Combined with his blade skills and tactical intelligence, he was a nightmare for hero society. The HPSC was desperate to stop him. Public trust in heroes was wavering. Parents questioned whether their children were safe with fake heroes. Patrolling the streets, Izuku read the reports with professional interest. Stain was competent, better trained than most villains, driven by ideology rather than greed, willing to kill. Dangerous combination. Their paths crossed in Hosu City. Izuku had been sent on an internship with a local hero agency, more surveillance from the HPSC ensuring he didn't disappear. The arrangement was tedious. He spent his days following pro heroes around, watching them pose for cameras and handle minor incidents. Night was when he did real work. A contact from his mercenary days had reached out with a contract, retrieved documents from a crime syndicate's office in Hosu's warehouse district. Simple job, good pay, minimal risk. Izuku accepted. He moved through the warehouse district like a ghost, avoiding cameras and patrols with practiced ease. The target building was ahead, security light but professional. He'd be in and out in 20 minutes, then he heard the screams. Izuku paused. Not his problem, someone else's emergency. He should continue with the contract, collect his payment, leave. But the screams were close, and something about them triggered old instincts, survival instincts from when he'd been 4 years old, abandoned, listening to the sounds of the slums, learning to distinguish between drunk brawls and actual danger. This was actual danger. He changed course, moving toward the sounds. An alley, 2 blocks away. The smell of blood hit him before he saw the scene. Native, a pro hero who specialized in rescue operations, was pinned to the wall by multiple blades through his arms, torso. Not lethal placements, but incapacitating. He was conscious, paralyzed, bleeding. Standing over him was a man in a tattered costume, face wrapped in a blood-stained scarf, multiple swords strapped to his back and belt. His eyes were wild, fanatical. Another false hero, Stain said, his voice gravely. You don't deserve the title. You patrol for a paycheck, smile for cameras, never risk anything real. You're a cancer on society. Native tried to speak, couldn't. The paralysis had him completely. Stain raised his blade for a killing blow. Izuku's combat knife whistled through the air, embedding in the wall an inch from Stain's head. The hero killer spun, katana coming up in a defensive stance. His eyes found Izuku standing at the alley entrance, but another knife already in hand. Who? Stain's eyes widened slightly. You, the sports festival, Midoriya Izuku. You're about to kill a hero, Izuku said flatly. I'm going to stop you. Stain's expression shifted. Surprise, then something approaching respect. You're not a hero. I watched your fights. You move like a killer, not a savior. Why interfere? Because you're annoying me. Honest, I appreciate that. Stain pulled Izuku's knife from the wall, examined it. Quality steel, military grade. You've killed before. Yes. Then you understand. These false heroes corrupt the system. They wear the title without earning it, protect the status quo while the real rot festers beneath. Someone must purge them. And you appointed yourself judge, jury, and executioner, Izuku said. Self-righteous vigilante playing God. I've seen a dozen like you, all dead now. Stain's eyes narrowed. You think you can stop me? I know I can. Yet the hero killer moved. His speed was impressive, enhanced by training and drive, faster than most pro heroes. His blade came in low, aiming for Izuku's femoral artery. A killing blow, professional. Izuku sidestepped, his own blade intercepting. Metal rang on metal. Stain followed with a high slash, then a thrust, combination attack designed to overwhelm. Izuku parried each strike with minimal movement, reading the patterns. Stain fought like someone trained in classical sword arts, disciplined and precise. Good. Discipline could be exploited. Izuku broke the exchange by dropping low and sweeping Stain's legs. The hero killer jumped, twisted in midair, brought his blade down in an overhead chop. Izuku rolled clear, came up with the inverted spear of heaven in hand. The ornate blade's appearance made Stain pause fractionally. That pause was enough. Izuku closed the distance, spear thrusting forward. Stain parried, his katana meeting the spear's shaft, and his quirk shut off. The effect was immediate and terrifying for Stain. His enhanced durability vanished. His metabolic boost ceased. For 3 seconds, he was fully human. Izuku's fist caught him in the ribs, cracking bone. Stain gasped, stumbled back. Izuku pressed forward, spear dancing through defensive patterns, each strike either landing or coming within millimeters. Stain's skill kept him alive, barely. He blocked with his katana, used throwing knives to create distance, activated his blood-curdle quirk by licking blood from a shallow cut on his arm. But Izuku wasn't bleeding. Every attack either missed or was deflected, and every time Stain's blade touched the inverted spear, his quirk shut down again. What is that weapon? Stain demanded, breathing hard. A reminder that quirks aren't everything. Izuku switched to the split-soul katana. The cursed blade emerged from the worm's storage, gleaming with that inner light that made Stain's eyes widen. You're no ordinary student, Stain realized. You're the Sorcerer Killer. The rumors are true. Obviously. They engaged again, this time with both wielding katanas. The duel was brutal and precise, master versus master, ideology versus pragmatism. Blades clashed in rapid exchanges, sparks flying. Stain's fanaticism drove him forward. Izuku's cold calculation kept him alive. But the split-soul katana had an advantage. Stain couldn't counter. When it cut even shallow wounds, it damaged more than flesh. It severed the connection between body and spirit, dealing wounds that couldn't heal normally. Stain felt it on the third exchange, when Izuku's blade opened a cut on his shoulder. The pain was wrong, deeper than it should be, lingering in a way that defied explanation. What Izuku didn't explain. He attacked again, blade moving in patterns designed to accumulate damage. Cut the arm, reduce mobility. Cut the leg, impair stance. Cut the chest, make breathing difficult. Stain tried to adapt, used his environment, wall running using debris as cover, attempting to lick Izuku's blood to paralyze him. He never got close enough. Izuku was faster, stronger, more experienced. Every technique Stain tried, Izuku had seen before. Every strategy, already countered in a dozen previous fights. The hero killer was good. Izuku was better. The final exchange lasted 3 seconds. Stain committed to a desperate thrust, putting all his remaining strength into a killing blow aimed at Izuku's heart. Izuku sidestepped, the blade passing millimeters from his chest. His own blade came up in a rising slash that disarmed Stain, sending the katana flying. Before Stain could recover, Izuku's foot connected with his chest, shattering the already cracked ribs and sending him crashing into the alley wall. Stain slid down, coughing blood. His quirk tried to activate, failed. Too much accumulated damage from the split-soul katana. His body wouldn't respond properly. Izuku stood over him, blade pointed at his throat. You wanted to purge false heroes, Izuku said quietly. Noble goal, terrible execution. You think killing them proves anything? It just creates martyrs and makes their replacements more cautious. Then, what would you do? Stain rasped. I don't care. care enough to do anything. The hero system is broken, but so is every system. Humans are corrupt by nature. Killing won't fix that. Izuku's blade pressed closer. You talk about conviction and true heroism, but you're just another killer with delusions of grandeur. The only difference between us is I'm honest about what I am. Then kill me. Prove your philosophy. No. Izuku lowered the blade. You're not worth it. Living with your failure is a better punishment. He turned toward Native, who was still paralyzed but conscious, eyes wide. The pro-hero had witnessed the entire fight. Seen Izuku dismantle the hero killer with cold efficiency, Izuku pulled out his phone, dialed the hero emergency line. Villain apprehended. Alley off 3rd and Main, Hosu Warehouse District. Send medical for an injured hero and prisoner transport. He hung up before they could ask questions. Stain watched from the ground, broken and defeated. You're stronger than me. Faster, more skilled. But you have no conviction. You fight for nothing. You'll die for nothing. Maybe. Izuku started walking away. But I'll die later than you would have. Sirens wailed in the distance. Pro-heroes, incoming. Time to leave. Behind him, Stain's voice called out one last time. The Sorcerer Killer. The one man who could change this world, and you choose to do nothing. Izuku didn't respond. He disappeared into the shadows, mission abandoned, contract failed, but with the satisfaction of shutting up another self-ideologue, the news the next day was explosive. Hero killer Stain captured in Hosu. Pro-hero native rescued by unknown vigilante. Eyewitnesses report teen defeated infamous villain in seconds. Descriptions of Izuku were vague. Dark clothing, multiple weapons, moved too fast to track clearly. No one got a clean photo. He'd remained a ghost. But the underworld knew. Word spread through criminal networks. The Sorcerer Killer had fought the Hero Killer and won decisively. His reputation, already fearsome, grew exponentially. And in that dark room, All for One watched the news with increasing interest. He grows stronger, the ancient villain mused, more notorious. The HPSC's leash won't hold him much longer. Should we approach him, Master? Kurogiri asked. Not yet, but soon. All for One's smile widened. When the time is right, I'll offer him something he can't refuse. Or I'll crush him. Either outcome serves my purposes. He pulled up a file on his screen, everything his organization had gathered on Midoriya Izuku. The abandoned child, the mercenary, the sorcerer killer, a boy with no quirk who'd become more dangerous than most quirk users could dream. Fascinating. All for One whispered. Truly fascinating. Back at UA, the aftermath of the Stain incident created new complications. Izuku's involvement couldn't be officially acknowledged. He wasn't a licensed hero, hadn't been authorized for combat operations, and the HPSC was already nervous about public perception. But Nezu knew. Aizawa knew. The students who'd been watching the news suspected. Midoriya. Aizawa cornered him after class one day. You were in Hosu during the Stain incident. I was on an internship. You assigned it. Don't play dumb. Native's description matches you. The fighting style matches your sports festival performance. And somehow Stain ended up with wounds that multiple medical quirks can't fully heal. Aizawa's eyes were hard. What did you do? My job, security consultant, remember? I secured a hero's safety by nearly killing a villain. He's alive, isn't he? You're welcome. Aizawa's jaw tightened, but he had no real counter-argument. Izuku had saved Native's life and stopped one of the most dangerous villains currently active. By any metric, that was a success. The HPSC wants a full report, Aizawa said finally. You'll need to. I already sent one to Nezu. They can read it there. Izuku moved toward the door. Is there anything else? Yeah. Why do you do it? Why fight at all if you don't believe in the hero system? Izuku paused, hand on the doorframe. Because the world is full of self-righteous idiots who think they have all the answers. Someone needs to remind them they don't. He left before Aizawa could respond. The school year continued. Final exams approached. Practical tests against pro-heroes, written assessments, team exercises. Class 1A prepared nervously. Aware that failure could mean remedial summer school, Izuku prepared by not preparing. He'd faced real villains, real stakes. A test against heroes pulling their punches didn't concern him. The practical exam paired students against specific pro-heroes designed to challenge their weaknesses. Bakugo and Midoriya were paired together, a deliberate choice by the faculty to force cooperation between two students who clearly had history. Their opponent, All Might. The symbol of peace stood at the exit gate of the testing area, arms crossed, that permanent smile somehow more intimidating in combat context. Young Bakugo, young Midoriya. All Might's voice boomed. Your test is simple. Either capture me with these handcuffs, or one of you must escape the testing area within the time limit. However, his aura intensified, power radiating visibly. I won't be going easy on you, because I am here. Bakugo's grin was feral. Finally, a real challenge, Izuku assessed coldly. All Might was the strongest hero alive, capable of changing weather patterns with his punches. Even if he held back significantly for a student exam, he was still dangerous. We need a strategy, Izuku said. Fuck strategy. I'm gonna blast him into next week. Bakugo charged forward, explosions propelling him. Predictable. All Might moved with deceptive speed, his massive fist coming around in a telegraphed but devastating hook. Bakugo tried to dodge, wasn't quite fast enough. The punch connected, pulled to avoid serious injury, but still powerful enough to send Bakugo flying backward. Too straightforward. All Might called. A hero must think tactically. Bakugo crashed into rubble, groaning. Izuku sighed. Working with an ally this stupid was harder than working alone. He pulled the inverted spear of heaven from storage and charged. All Might's eyes widened fractionally. He recognized the weapon from reports, knew its quirk-nullifying properties. He adjusted strategy, using his superior speed to stay out of range, but Izuku was faster than All Might expected. The blade came within inches, forcing the symbol of peace to dodge seriously rather than tank the hit. Impressive speed, young Midoriya, but you'll need more than... Izuku threw a flashbang. All Might, surprised, instinctively shielded his eyes. That split second of distraction was enough. Izuku closed the distance, spear thrusting toward All Might's arm. If he could land even a glancing blow, it would nullify One for All temporarily, create an opening. All Might pivoted, the spear missing by centimeters. His counterattack was a palm strike aimed at Izuku's chest, enough force to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. Izuku dropped under it, swept All Might's legs, or tried to. The symbol of peace's stance was too solid, rooted by sheer strength. They separated, both reassessing. You're holding back, Izuku observed. Afraid of killing students? A hero's greatest strength is knowing when not to use full power, All Might replied. But don't think that means, Bakugo returned, explosions blazing. I'm not done yet! For once, his terrible timing was useful. All Might had to split his attention between two opponents. Izuku and Bakugo, despite hating each other, fell into an unconscious rhythm. Bakugo's aggressive explosions forcing All Might to dodge, creating openings for Izuku's precise strikes. The fight continued, escalating. All Might was forced to use more power, his punches creating shockwaves, his speed increasing to the point where normal humans couldn't track him. But Izuku wasn't normal. And even Bakugo, for all his flaws, was a combat prodigy. The turning point came when Bakugo, in a moment of genuine tactical thinking, created a massive smokescreen with sustained explosions. All Might's vision was obscured. Izuku used the chain of 1,000 miles, whipping it through the smoke to wrap around All Might's ankle. The symbol of peace, unable to see the attack, was caught. Izuku yanked. All Might, surprised, stumbled. His balance was perfect, his recovery instant. But for half a second, he was vulnerable. Bakugo's gauntlet-stored explosion, his ultimate move, detonated point blank. The blast was enormous, clearing the smoke, cratering the ground. All Might was thrown backward, his costume scorched. Now, Izuku shouted. For once, Bakugo listened. They both sprinted for the exit gate while All Might recovered. The symbol of peace could catch them, should catch them, but the time limit was nearly up, and the test's purpose was to evaluate teamwork and tactical thinking. All Might let them go. Time! The announcement echoed. Team Bakugo and Midoriya pass. Bakugo whooped, explosions of celebration popping from his palms. Izuku just walked through the exit gate, expression unchanged. They'd passed. That was sufficient. All Might approached as the test area powered down. His smile was genuine, if slightly pained from the explosion. Excellent work, boys. You demonstrated adaptability, utilized each other's strengths, and achieved the objective. This is what teamwork looks like. We still hate each other, Bakugo said bluntly. Yeah, Izuku agreed. All Might's smile didn't falter. That's fine. Many great hero teams started as rivals. What matters is you can set aside differences when lives are at stake. Izuku doubted he and Bakugo would ever be teammates outside forced situations, but he didn't argue. The test was over. Summer break was approaching, and more importantly, his arrangement with UA was nearly complete. The final day of the semester arrived with mixed emotions among Class 1A. They'd survived villain attacks, brutal training, and the sports festival. Summer break meant rest, but also separation from newfound friends. Izuku felt nothing. His time at UA had been a forced diversion from his real life. Now it was ending. Nezu summoned him to the office one last time. "Well, Mr. Midoriya," the principal said, sipping tea, "you've completed your obligations to the HPSC. Your performance, while unorthodox, has been satisfactory. You're free to go." "Just like that? Just like that? Unless you'd like to stay?" Nezu's eyes glittered with amusement. "You could enroll properly, train to become a licensed hero, use your considerable talents for—" "No, I didn't think so." Nezu set down his cup. "Before you go, indulge my curiosity. What did you think of your time here? Of the students? Of the hero society you've been observing?" Izuku considered. Honest answer or diplomatic answer? With Nezu, honesty was usually more interesting. "The students are sheltered," he said finally. "Talented, but naive. They think being a hero is about justice and saving people. They haven't learned it's about politics, public image, and maintaining the status quo. Cynical. Realistic. A few of them might survive long enough to learn that. Most won't. And hero society as a whole? Broken but functional. Like most systems, held together by duct tape and collective delusion. It'll collapse eventually, probably within our lifetimes. Something worse will replace it." Nezu chuckled. "You paint a bleak picture." "You asked for my observation, not my optimism." Izuku stood. "If that's all?" "One more thing." Nezu's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "All for One knows about you. He's been observing, gathering information. Eventually, he'll make contact." "I know. When he does, be careful. That man has been playing this game for over a century. He's destroyed countless people who thought they were cleverer than him." "I'm not clever. I'm just better at killing." Izuku moved toward the door. "Thanks for the warning, Mr. Midoriya." Nezu's voice stopped him. "Despite everything, I hope you find what you're looking for, whatever that may be." Izuku left without responding. What was he looking for? Survival, mostly. A decent paycheck. Maybe someday, an opponent strong enough to actually challenge him. He collected his few belongings from the dorm he'd barely unpacked and walked toward the UA exit gate. Students milled around, saying goodbyes, making summer plans. "Midoriya," Uraraka's voice called. She jogged over, Ida and a few others trailing behind. "You're leaving already?" "I'm done here." "But we'll see you next semester, right?" Izuku looked at her earnest face, at the other students watching, hopefully. They still didn't understand what he was, what he'd been doing here. "Probably not," he said. "Oh," her face fell. "Well, if you ever want to hang out or train together or—" "I won't." He wasn't trying to be cruel, just honest. These kids weren't his friends. They were temporary obstacles in a forced diversion from his real life. Ida stepped forward, hand extended. "Regardless, thank you for your assistance during the USJ incident. Your actions saved lives." Izuku looked at the offered hand, didn't take it. "I was doing a job. Nothing more." He walked past them, past the gates, into the city beyond. Behind him, he heard murmured conversations. Confusion, hurt feelings, speculation about what his deal was. Let them wonder. Freedom tasted like the polluted air of Musatafu's industrial district. Izuku inhaled deeply, feeling the tension of months spent pretending to be a student drain away. He pulled out a burner phone, checked messages. 17 contract offers. Most were standard: theft, intimidation, information gathering. One caught his attention. High-value target. Discretion required. Payment substantial. Interested? The sender was anonymous, but the encryption style was familiar. This was from someone with serious resources and serious problems. Izuku typed a response. Details? The reply came instantly. Meet tonight. Coordinates attached. Come alone. The coordinates led to an abandoned factory in the warehouse district. Obviously a trap, possibly an ambush, definitely dangerous. Izuku went anyway. The factory was dark, machinery long since rusted into abstract sculptures. He moved through it silently, every sense alert. The cursed worm coiled tighter, weapons ready. Punctual, a voice echoed from the shadows. "I appreciate that." The voice was wrong, distorted, artificial, someone using a modulator. Izuku's hand moved to the knife hidden at his back. Show yourself, he said. In a moment. First, let's discuss business. I have a proposition for someone of your unique talents. I don't work for people I can't see. Laughter. Hollow and mechanical. Fair enough. A figure emerged from the darkness. They wore a full-body suit with a featureless mask, completely anonymous. But even through the disguise, Izuku could sense power. Not a quirk exactly, but something else. Presence. Authority. I represent an organization, the figure said. We've been watching you for some time. Your work is impressive, professional, effective. Get to the point. We'd like to offer you a position. Steady contracts, excellent pay, protection from law enforcement, access to resources beyond anything you currently possess. The figure tilted its head. In exchange, you'd handle certain problematic individuals, people who interfere with our operations. You want me to be your assassin. We want you to be what you already are, simply with better support. Izuku considered. The offer was good, too good, which meant either they were desperate, or this was recruitment for something bigger than a standard criminal organization. Who do you work for? He asked. Someone who understands the true nature of power, someone who's been shaping society from the shadows for longer than you've been alive. All for one. It had to be. This was it, the confrontation Nezu had warned about. The ancient villain, the demon lord of the criminal underworld, making his move. And if I refuse, Izuku asked, already knowing the answer, then you become problematic yourself, and we handle problems. The temperature in the factory dropped. Other figures emerged from the shadows, 6 of them, all enhanced, all dangerous. This was both recruitment and test. Accept the offer or prove he deserved to be eliminated, Izuku's hand moved to the cursed worm. I work alone. Pity. The masked figure stepped back. Kill him. The enhanced villains attacked. They were good. Better than the thugs at the USJ, better than most mercenaries Izuku had fought. Quirks flickered to life. Enhanced strength, telekinesis, shadow manipulation, acid generation, speed enhancement, and something that looked like energy projection. Izuku didn't bother with talking. He pulled the split soul katana and the inverted spear simultaneously, dual wielding. The speedster came first, moving in a blur. Izuku read the trajectory, pivoted, and drove the split soul katana through the speedster's abdomen. The cursed blade cut deeper than flesh, severing the connection between the villain's quirk and their enhanced metabolism. The speedster fell, coughing blood. Normal human speed restored permanently. The strongman tried to grab Izuku from behind. The inverted spear whipped around, its shaft striking the strongman's enhanced arms. Quirk nullification rippled through muscle. Normal human strength couldn't hold Izuku. He twisted free, drove the spear into the strongman's knee, shattering the joint. Telekinetic force grabbed at Izuku, trying to lift him off the ground. He threw a knife, perfectly aimed at the telekinetic's concentration point. The blade buried in the villain's shoulder. Concentration broken, telekinesis failed. Shadow tendrils lashed out. Izuku cut through them with the split soul katana, the cursed blade severing not just the manifestations, but the connection to the user. The shadow manipulator screamed as feedback from the severed technique racked their body. Acid sprayed across the factory floor. Izuku was already moving, too fast to hit, too fluid to predict. He appeared beside the acid generator, split soul katana at their throat. Stop or die, he said calmly. The acid generator froze. The energy projector, last one standing, hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, Izuku moved. The inverted spear pierced the projector's hand, the source of their quirk. Nullification shut down the energy generation. A follow-up strike with the katana's pommel knocked them unconscious. 6 seconds. 6 opponents, all neutralized. Izuku stood among the fallen, blades dripping with blood and something darker. He turned toward the masked figure, who hadn't moved. Impressive, the figure said. No fear in its modulated voice. You live up to your reputation. I'm not interested in your offer, Izuku said flatly. Tell your boss if he wants me, he can come himself instead of sending proxies. Oh, he will, sooner than you think. The figure backed toward the shadows. This was just an introduction, Sorcerer Killer. The real game hasn't even started yet. Purple-black mist swirled around the figure. Kurogiri's portals. The figure disappeared, leaving Izuku alone with the defeated villains. He cleaned his blades, returned them to storage, and left the factory. The contract offer had been bait, just as he'd suspected. All for One was testing him. Measuring his capabilities, the ancient villain now knew Izuku was powerful, skilled, and unwilling to be recruited easily, which meant the next encounter wouldn't be recruitment. It would be elimination. Izuku pulled out his phone, sent a message to New. All for One made contact, refused recruitment, expect escalation. The response came immediately. Return to UA. We can protect you. Izuku almost laughed. Protection? He didn't need protection. He needed preparation. He typed, "No. I'll handle this my way." Because the truth was, Izuku had been waiting for this. Since the moment he'd heard about All for One, since learning about the demon lord who'd shaped hero society from the shadows, he'd wondered who was stronger. Now he'd find out. The Sorcerer Killer versus the symbol of evil. Only one would walk away. The next few weeks were silent warfare. All for One's organization probed Izuku's defenses, tested his capabilities, sent increasingly dangerous villains after him. Izuku killed them all. Each contract became a battlefield. Each job turned into a trap. But Izuku was always faster, always more prepared, always willing to escalate beyond what his opponents expected. His reputation in the underworld reached mythical proportions. The boy who killed without hesitation, who walked through quirk users like they were paper, who disappeared after each encounter like smoke. And through it all, Izuku waited for the real threat. It came on a moonless night in Kamino Ward. Izuku had been tracking a rumor about All for One's main base. The League of Villains operated from somewhere in this district, hidden among the urban decay. Finding it would give him the initiative, let him strike first. He was scaling a building when the air behind him warped. Instinct saved him. Izuku threw himself sideways as purple-black mist erupted where he'd been standing. He landed on a lower rooftop, blades already drawn. Kurogiri's portal expanded and a figure stepped through. All for One. The man's face was a ruin, scarred, eyeless, barely human. His suit was immaculate, his posture relaxed. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace, so intense that weaker individuals would faint just being near him. Izuku felt nothing. No fear, no awe, just cold assessment. "Midoriya Izuku," All for One said, his voice cultured and pleasant despite the horror of his appearance. "The Sorcerer Killer, the boy with no quirk who's killed more quirk users than some veteran heroes. I've wanted to meet you for quite some time." "You sent assassins instead," Izuku replied. "Coward's move." All for One laughed, genuine amusement. "Hardly. I was testing. You passed every test magnificently. Now I'm here to make you a final offer." "Not interested. You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to. You're a manipulator who sees people as tools. I don't work for tools." The air grew heavy. All for One's amusement faded slightly. "You're remarkably arrogant for someone so young. Tell me, child, do you understand what I am, what I can do?" Ancient villain with a quirk that steals and grants other quirks. You've been playing puppet master for over a century, manipulating hero society for your own purposes. Izuku's grip tightened on his blades. "You're also a narcissist who can't handle rejection, hence why you're here instead of sending more disposable minions." Perceptive. All for One's tone didn't change, but the pressure in the air increased. "Since you seem to understand my capabilities, surely you realize fighting me would be suicide." "Maybe. Only one way to find out." All for One sighed. "Such a waste. You could have been magnificent under my guidance. Instead, you choose death." His hand raised. Air pressure condensed, then exploded outward in a shockwave that leveled the rooftop. Izuku was already moving, the blast missing him by inches. He closed distance, inverted spear thrusting toward All for One's chest. The ancient villain's hand caught the spear mid-thrust. Izuku felt resistance, multiple quirks activating simultaneously. Enhanced strength, impact nullification, kinetic absorption. The inverted spear's nullification rippled through the layered defenses. For a fraction of a second, the quirks shut down. Izuku's other blade, the split soul katana, came up in a rising slash aimed at All for One's neck. A portal opened, swallowing the blade. It emerged behind Izuku, his own attack redirected. He avoided being impaled by his own weapon. All for One released the spear, stepped back. "Interesting weapons. They can actually threaten me. Where did you acquire them?" Izuku didn't answer. He attacked again, both blades working in concert. The inverted spear nullified quirks on contact. The split soul katana cut through defenses that should be impenetrable, but All for One had centuries of combat experience. He wove between strikes with surprising grace for his apparent age, used portals to redirect attacks, activated quirks in rapid succession to counter Izuku's approach, air cannon blasts forced Izuku to dodge, impact recoil punished successful strikes by reflecting damage, warping redirected blade thrusts into empty space were just the quirks All For One felt like using. "You're skilled," All For One said conversationally, dodging a combination attack. "But you're fighting a battle you can't win. I have hundreds of quirks at my disposal. You have physical capability and exotic weapons. The mathematics are unfavorable." Izuku didn't respond. He was calculating, analyzing patterns. All For One's quirk use wasn't random. It followed logical progressions. Defense, offense, utility, cycling through options based on Izuku's attacks, which meant it could be predicted. Izuku feinted with the inverted spear. All For One activated kinetic absorption, preparing to nullify the strike. Instead, Izuku threw the split soul katana like a javelin. The cursed blade pierced All For One's shoulder before the ancient villain could react. The wound was shallow but significant, damage that transcended normal healing. All For One's hand went to the wound, fingers coming away with blood. "Ah, that actually hurt." Then he smiled. "Good." Power erupted. Multiple quirks activated simultaneously, layered and amplified. Enhanced strength, speed enhancement, kinetic amplification, sensory acceleration. All For One became a blur of motion, crossing the distance to Izuku in a heartbeat. His fist connected with Izuku's ribs. The impact was catastrophic. Bones cracked. Izuku was launched backward, crashing through a wall into the building beyond. He hit concrete hard enough to crater it, blood filling his mouth. Pain. Real pain. When was the last time he'd felt this? All For One walked through the hole in the wall, power radiating visibly now. "Did you really think you could win? You're impressive for a child, I'll grant you that, but I've fought wars before your grandparents were born." Izuku coughed blood, struggled to stand. The cursed worm coiled protectively, trying to shield his damaged ribs. His vision blurred. "I've toppled governments," All For One continued, approaching slowly. "Killed the strongest heroes of multiple generations. Shaped society itself to my design. What makes you think a 16-year-old with stolen weapons could defeat me?" Izuku's hand moved to his side. The cursed worm opened its storage. He pulled out a small device, a dead man's switch. All For One paused. "What's that?" "Insurance," Izuku rasped. "Explosives. Enough to level 3 city blocks. I set them before you arrived. If my heart stops, they detonate." "Bluffing. Try me." They stared at each other across the ruined room. All For One's scarred face was unreadable. Izuku's green eyes were cold despite the pain. "You'd kill yourself just to take me down?" All For One said finally. "If necessary." Silence stretched. Then All For One laughed, genuinely amused. "You really are magnificent. Ruthless, pragmatic, willing to sacrifice everything for victory. You remind me of myself at your age. I'm nothing like you. No, we're both survivors shaped by a cruel world. Both willing to do what others won't. Both beyond the false morality of hero society." All For One's smile widened. "The only difference is I had the power to reshape the world. You're just trying to survive it. Survival is enough. Is it?" All For One turned toward the hole in the wall. "Keep your explosives. Keep your weapons. Keep surviving, Sorcerer Killer. But know this, one day, survival won't be enough. One day, you'll have to choose, reshape the world or be reshaped by it." Purple-black mist swirled around him, Kurogiri's portal opening. "Until we meet again," All For One said, and disappeared. The portal closed. Izuku was alone, bleeding, ribs broken, clutching a dead man's switch that wasn't connected to anything. The bluff had worked. He collapsed, letting the adrenaline fade, feeling every injury. The cursed worm tried to help, but it couldn't heal broken bones. He needed a hospital. Instead, he pulled out his phone, sent a message to Nezu, encountered All For One, survived, require medical assistance. The response was immediate. Location, sending help now. Izuku sent coordinates and passed out. He woke in UA's medical ward 3 days later. Recovery Girl had healed the worst injuries, but several ribs were still tender, wrapped in bandages and medical tape. Nezu sat beside the bed, sipping tea. "Welcome back," the principal said pleasantly. "You gave us quite a scare." "How bad?" 3 broken ribs, ruptured spleen, internal bleeding, minor concussion. Recovery Girl says you'll make a full recovery, though she's baffled by your enhanced healing rate. Nezu's eyes glittered. "Care to explain how you survived an encounter with All For One?" bluffed, told him I had explosives rigged to detonate if my heart stopped. And did you? No. Nezu laughed, actual laughter, not his usual chuckle. Magnificent. You threatened mutual destruction with nothing but conviction. All for One believed you because that's exactly what he would do. It was stupid, Izuku said, if he'd called the bluff. But he didn't, because you sold it perfectly. Nezu set down his tea. This changes things, Mr. Midoriya. All for One now sees you as either a potential asset or a threat to be eliminated. There's no middle ground with him. I know, which means you can't operate in the shadows anymore. He'll be watching, hunting. Eventually, he'll make another move, and it won't be a conversation. Izuku already knew this. His life as a freelance mercenary was over. All for One's attention was too intense, too dangerous. He needed allies, resources, protection. He needed UA. The offer still stands, Nezu said quietly. Enroll properly, train with the other students. In exchange, UA provides protection, legal cover, and resources to face what's coming. And if I refuse, then you're on your own when All for One returns. I won't interfere with your choices, but I won't watch a talented young man die needlessly either. Izuku closed his eyes. Every instinct screamed not to trust, not to rely on others, but instinct had limits. All for One had demonstrated that clearly. What are the terms? He asked finally. Same as any student. Attend classes, follow school rules, participate in hero training. In exchange, full protection of UA's resources and faculty, legal immunity for past mercenary work, and a path toward a hero license if you choose. And if I don't choose heroism, then you'll have the skills to survive whatever path you do choose. Nezu smiled. I'm not trying to reform you, Mr. Midoriya. I'm offering you options. What you do with them is your decision. Izuku thought about Class 1A, their naive idealism, their sheltered worldviews, their genuine belief in heroism. Could he stand being around that constantly? But he also thought about All for One's overwhelming power, the certainty that another encounter would come, the knowledge that alone he would eventually lose. Pride had limits, survival mattered more. Fine, he said, I'll enroll, but on one condition. Name it. When All for One comes again, and he will come, I face him. Not All Might, not the other heroes. Me. Nezu's expression turned serious. That's dangerous. That's the deal. That's the deal. Silence stretched. Then Nezu nodded slowly. Agreed. When All for One makes his move, you'll have your chance. But until then, you train, you learn, and you prepare. Because next time, a bluff won't be enough. I know. And so Midoriya Izuku, the Sorcerer Killer, the boy born with nothing who'd become death itself, returned to UA High School. Not as a spy, not as a temporary observer, but as a student. Class 1A's reactions ranged from shock to excitement to suspicion when he walked into the classroom at the start of second semester. Aizawa simply sighed, recognizing inevitable chaos. Midoriya's back, the teacher announced flatly. He'll be attending permanently now. Try not to die around him. Uraraka bounced in her seat. Midoriya, you came back. Bakugo glared. Shh, couldn't stay away, huh, you hollow-eyed bastard? Todoroki's expression was unreadable. Welcome back. Izuku ignored them all, taking his seat in the back corner. The cursed worm coiled contentedly beneath his shirt, weapons ready as always. Outside, the world continued turning. Heroes patrolled, villains schemed, and somewhere in the shadows, All for One watched and waited, patient as death itself. The game had changed. The stakes had escalated. And the final confrontation between the Sorcerer Killer and the Demon Lord loomed on the horizon like a storm. But for now, in this moment, Izuku Midoriya sat in a classroom full of children playing at heroism, and for the first time in his life considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was more to survival than simply not dying. Maybe there was actually living. The thought was strange, uncomfortable, almost hopeful. He buried it deep and focused on Aizawa's lesson about hero law and ethics, already planning how to exploit the loopholes. Some things never changed. Aizawa droned on about the legal frameworks governing quirk usage in public spaces, his monotone voice perfectly calibrated to induce sleep in anyone not actively fighting it. Izuku listened with half his attention, the other half cataloging the 17 ways the regulations could be exploited by someone who understood their actual implementation versus their written intent. The HPSC had designed these laws to control hero society, not protect it. Every restriction had a loophole. Every mandate had an exception clause. If you knew where to look, and Izuku always knew where to look, The entire system was Swiss cheese. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice cut through his analysis. Since you're so interested in hero law, perhaps you can explain the liability exemption clause in Section 47B. The class turned to look at him. Izuku met Aizawa's tired eyes with his own hollow green ones. Property damage caused during villain apprehension is exempt from civil liability if the responding hero can demonstrate reasonable necessity and proportional response. However, reasonable necessity is subjectively determined by a review board composed primarily of HPSC appointees, meaning the actual standard is whatever the commission decides won't create bad publicity. Izuku's tone was flat, factual. The law is theater. The real rule is, don't embarrass the people in charge. Silence. Aizawa's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Correct. Cynical, but correct. He turned back to the board. Moving on. Whispers erupted behind Izuku. He ignored them. The other students still didn't understand what he was, why he was here. They thought his return meant he'd changed, softened, decided to play hero. They were wrong. He was here because All for One had made him prey, and prey that couldn't hide needed a den. UA was that den. Fortified, protected, backed by Japan's strongest heroes. When the ancient villain made his next move, Izuku would be ready. And when that moment came, he would remind All for One why you didn't hunt the Sorcerer Killer. You became his target instead. The announcement came 3 days later. Summer training camp, Aizawa said, his usual exhausted tone somehow more exhausted. 1 week in the mountains, intensive quirk development exercises, stamina training, and team coordination drills. Attendance is mandatory. Groans rippled through Class 1A. Kaminari immediately started complaining about missing summer break. Mineta made an inappropriate comment about hot springs. Momo began organizing a packing list. Izuku calculated logistics. Remote location, limited civilian presence, focused training environment. Tactically, it was a perfect ambush site. The League of Villains had already demonstrated willingness to attack UA directly. A training camp in the wilderness, away from the school's fortifications, would be irresistible. They would come. The only question was when. Pack light, Aizawa continued. We leave in 4 days. Don't bring anything you can't carry for 5 kilometers. That includes you, Ashido. But Sensei, no. Izuku tuned out the complaints. He had preparations to make. The cursed worm coiled tighter as Izuku loaded additional weapons into its storage dimension. Standard loadout, inverted spear of heaven, split soul katana, chain of 1,000 miles, combat knives, flashbangs, smoke grenades, firearms with assorted ammunition types. Then the additions, claymore mines, det cord, incendiary charges, and enough C4 to level a city block. If the League attacked the camp, he would turn the forest into their graveyard. You're preparing for war, a voice observed from the doorway. Izuku didn't turn. He recognized the voice. Todoroki, one of the few students who'd actually learned something from their sports festival fight. The dual-element user had started using both ice and fire regularly, stopped handicapping himself out of spite for his bastard father. Growth, rare in this class. I'm preparing for probability, Izuku replied, sliding another magazine into the worm's storage. The League has attacked twice. They'll attack again. Better to have weapons and not need them. That's a lot of explosives for not needing them. The League brought a Nomu to the USJ, a bioengineered monster that regenerated from dismemberment. Izuku finally turned, his green eyes meeting Todoroki's mismatched ones. Next time, they'll bring worse. I plan to be ready. Todoroki's expression was unreadable, a skill he'd learned from years of living with Endeavor's abuse. You really think they'll attack the training camp? I know they will. Remote location, limited pro-hero presence, concentration of valuable targets. Izuku returned to his weapons check. The only question is what they're actually after. Last time it was chaos and testing All Might's response time. This time... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. This time, they were coming for him. All for One had survived their encounter in Kamino Ward, been forced to retreat by a bluff and superior positioning. The ancient villain wouldn't forget that humiliation, wouldn't forgive it. The League's next attack would have one primary objective: kill the Sorcerer Killer. When they come, Todoroki said quietly, we'll be ready too. You'll be in the way. Maybe. Or maybe we've learned from fighting alongside someone who actually knows what war looks like. Todoroki's left side flickered with small flames, his right with frost. We're not the same students who panicked at the USJ. Izuku studied him. The temperature around Todoroki had dropped slightly on one side, risen on the other, unconscious manifestation of his quirk responding to emotional state. He was serious, determined, still naive, still sheltered, still playing at heroism, but less useless than before. "Don't die," Izuku said finally. "It would be inconvenient." Todoroki almost smiled. "I'll try not to inconvenience you." He left. Izuku returned to his preparations, the cursed worm humming contentedly as it swallowed another combat knife into its infinite storage. The training camp was exactly as isolated as Izuku had predicted, deep in the mountains, surrounded by dense forest, accessible only by a single winding road. The facility itself was modest, a main lodge, several training grounds, and a natural hot spring that had the female students immediately planning relaxation time. Izuku mapped every approach vector, every sight line, every choke point. The forest provided excellent cover for attackers, but could be turned into a kill zone with proper preparation. The main lodge was indefensible. Too many windows, weak structural points. The training grounds were open, vulnerable to ranged attacks. If he were planning an assault, he'd strike at night, use the forest for infiltration, separate the students into isolated groups, and eliminate them systematically before the pro heroes could coordinate a response. So that's exactly what the League would do. "Midoriya," Aizawa's voice cut through his tactical analysis. "Stop planning ambush countermeasures and join the others. You're here to train, not wage war." "Training is preparation for war," Izuku replied, but he moved toward where Class 1A had gathered. The wild pussycats, the pro-hero team managing the camp, were explaining the week's training regimen. Pixie Bob was enthusiastic to the point of being manic. Mandalay was more measured. Ragdoll bounced around hyperactively. Tiger looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Your quirks are muscles," Pixie Bob announced, creating an earth golem for emphasis. "This week, we're going to work them until they scream. You'll push past your limits, discover new applications, and become the heroes you're meant to be." Enthusiastic cheering from some students, nervous laughter from others. Bakugo looked eager for violence. Kaminari looked ready to pass out from anticipated exhaustion. Izuku felt nothing. His body didn't have a quirk to train. His limits were determined by physics and biology, not supernatural energy reserves. This week would be maintenance and observation while the others struggled. "What about you, Midoriya?" Mandalay asked, having noticed his detachment. "Your quirk is sensory nullification, correct?" "Presence erasure," he corrected. It was the cover story UA had created, a quirk that eliminated his presence from others' perception. Close enough to the truth that it couldn't be easily disproven, vague enough that questions about its mechanics could be deflected. "Right. So your training will focus on physical conditioning." Izuku gestured toward the forest. "Speed, strength, endurance, the usual." "That's..." Pixie Bob started, then paused, reconsidering. She'd watched the sports festival, seen him defeat quirk users through pure physical capability. "Actually, that makes sense. Carry on." The training began for Class 1A. It was brutal. Bakugo had to repeatedly superheat water using explosions until his sweat glands ached. Todoroki created ice structures and melted them with fire in rapid cycles until both halves of his quirk were screaming. Uraraka made herself float, nauseous and dizzy, pushing past her weight limit. Aida ran laps with his engines firing continuously, building stamina and heat resistance. Izuku ran laps too, but his laps were different. He ran through the forest at superhuman speed, weaving between trees without slowing, jumping obstacles without breaking stride, pushing his body to velocities that would shred normal human muscle tissue, 5 kilometers in 12 minutes. Then 10 kilometers in 23 minutes. Then 15. His heart rate barely elevated. His breathing remained controlled. The heavenly restriction didn't just give him superhuman capability, it gave him superhuman recovery. What would exhaust normal humans for days recovered in him within hours. By the third day, he was running 20-kilometer circuits through mountain terrain in under 30 minutes, carrying additional weight from the cursed worm's stored weapons. The wild pussycats watched with growing concern. "That's not normal," Ragdoll said, her search quirk tracking Izuku's movements through the forest. "His vitals are... I don't even know how to describe them. His cardiovascular efficiency is beyond anything I've seen. He's a monster, Tiger said, not unkindly. Just factual. We knew that already. The question, Mandalay said quietly, is whether he's our monster or theirs. Pixie Bob shook her head. Nezu vouches for him. That's good enough for me. Nezu vouches for his usefulness, Mandalay corrected. That's different from vouching for his loyalty. In the forest, Izuku completed another circuit and began weapons drills. The inverted spear flowed through forms designed for quirk nullification. Quick thrusts targeting limbs and center mass, minimal wind-up, maximum efficiency. The split soul katana carved through trees like they were paper, each cut perfectly placed to demonstrate the blade's ability to ignore conventional durability. He was preparing. Not for training exercises, for war. They came on the fourth night. Izuku woke instantly, combat instincts screaming before his conscious mind registered the threat. The cursed worm coiled tight, weapons ready. He was dressed and armed in seconds, moving toward the window, blue flames in the distance. Screaming. The acrid smell of burning wood. The League of Villains had arrived. Izuku dropped from the second-floor window, landing silently, and sprinted toward the flames. Around him, chaos erupted. Students stumbling from rooms, Aizawa and the Pussycats mobilizing, confused shouts and frightened cries. He ignored all of it, focusing on the tactical situation. Multiple fires meant multiple attackers. The flames were spreading fast, but not naturally. Accelerant or a fire-based quirk. The attack pattern suggested a perimeter assault, cutting off escape routes while funneling targets toward a killing ground. Professional. Coordinated. Someone with actual tactical training had planned this. Izuku reached the first fire and saw him. Dabi, the blue flame user from the League's attack on Hosu. The scarred villain was casually setting trees ablaze, creating a wall of fire that cut the camp off from the main road. Well, Dabi said, noticing Izuku's approach. The Sorcerer Killer himself. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down. Izuku didn't respond. He pulled a combat knife from the cursed worm and threw it in one smooth motion. The blade whistled through the air, aimed at Dabi's throat. The villain dodged, blue flames erupting in response, incinerating the surrounding vegetation. Fast, Dabi acknowledged. But let's see how you handle this. A wave of blue flame roared toward Izuku, hot enough to melt steel. He was already moving, using the chain of 1,000 miles to grab a tree branch overhead and swing clear. The flames passed beneath him, scorching the ground. Izuku released the chain mid-swing, pulled the inverted spear, and dove toward Dabi. The villain created a flame barrier, but the spear pierced through. Quirk nullification disrupting the flame's cohesion for a crucial instant. Dabi barely dodged, the spear scoring a line across his ribs. He stumbled back, hand going to the wound. What the? The wound wasn't healing. Normally, even minor injuries closed quickly for enhanced individuals. But the inverted spear's nullification had disrupted more than just active quirk usage. It had temporarily severed Dabi's enhanced healing factor. Interesting weapon, Dabi said, his casual tone strained with pain. Guess the rumors were true. You've got tricks beyond. Izuku was already attacking again, spear thrusting in rapid combinations. Dabi retreated, using flame bursts to create distance, but every time the spear connected with his flames, they dispersed like smoke. Shigaraki said, "You'd be annoying," Dabi muttered, abandoning his casual facade. Said we'd need special preparations. Guess he was right. A massive shape burst from the forest. The Nomu was different from the one at USJ. This one was leaner, faster, its exposed brain pulsing with unnatural energy. It moved with predatory intelligence, not the mindless aggression of its predecessor, and it was staring directly at Izuku. Meat tracker, Dabi said, grinning despite his wound. Bioengineered specifically to hunt someone with no presence. Echolocation quirk, enhanced sensory processing, regeneration that works even through quirk nullification, and strength that rivals all might. All for one's personal gift for the Sorcerer Killer. The Nomu screamed, a sound that shredded the air, ultrasonic waves rippling outward. Izuku felt them wash over him, mapping his position despite his lack of presence. Echolocation. It could sense him by sound reflection alone. The Nomu charged. Izuku threw himself sideways as the creature's fist cratered the ground where he'd stood. Superhuman speed barely kept him ahead of follow-up strikes that would have pulverized concrete. He counterattacked with the inverted spear, driving it into the Nomu's shoulder. Nullification rippled through the creature's enhanced musculature. For a normal opponent, this would be crippling. The Nomu didn't even slow down. It grabbed Izuku's arm, grip crushing, and threw him into a tree. Impact. Pain. Ribs cracking despite his enhanced durability. Izuku rolled with the throw, came up bleeding but mobile, and switched to the split soul katana. The cursed blade emerged from storage, inner light pulsing. Izuku charged, ducking under the Nomu's haymaker, and slashed across its abdomen. The split soul katana cut deep, through enhanced muscle, reinforced bone, organs that shouldn't be vulnerable. The Nomu screamed again, this time in pain, black blood spraying, but it didn't fall. The wound began regenerating, slower than normal but still healing. "Told you," Dabi called from behind his flame barrier. "That one's built different. Regeneration that adapts to whatever hurt it. Your fancy sword might slow it down, but it won't stop it." The Nomu attacked again, faster now, adapting to Izuku's speed. Its fists were biological sledgehammers, each swing capable of shattering bone. Izuku wove between strikes, countering with the katana when openings appeared, but the creature was learning his patterns. This was the first opponent since All for One that genuinely threatened him, a fight he might actually lose. The realization was cold, clinical. No fear, just tactical assessment. If he stayed engaged, the Nomu would adapt faster than he could overwhelm it. He needed a force multiplier. Behind him, he heard explosions. Bakugo engaging another villain. Ice erupted in the distance. Todoroki defending students. The wild pussycats were shouting coordinates, trying to organize a defense. The camp was chaos. Perfect conditions for what he needed to do. Izuku pulled a flashbang from the cursed worm and threw it at the Nomu's face. The creature's echolocation made it sensitive to sudden sensory input. The flash and sound disrupted its tracking for precious seconds. He sprinted past Dabi, ignoring the villain's flame attacks, and disappeared into the forest. "Running?" Dabi called after him. "That's not like you." Izuku didn't respond. He wasn't running. He was repositioning. The forest became his weapon. He moved through it like a ghost, using his lack of presence to mask his position from normal tracking. The Nomu could echolocate him, but only when it emitted its ultrasonic pulse. And those pulses had intervals. Between pulses, he was invisible. Izuku found what he was looking for. A narrow ravine with steep sides, limited approach angles, perfect choke point. He pulled det cord and claymore mines from the cursed worm's storage and began setting up. The Nomu crashed through the forest, tracking him. It was relentless, tireless, adapting with every exchange. But it was also predictable. It charged in straight lines, relied on overwhelming force rather than tactics. Izuku finished setting the trap and positioned himself on the far side of the ravine, clearly visible. The Nomu screamed its echolocation pulse, located him, and charged. It was halfway across the ravine when Izuku triggered the explosives. The blast was enormous. Claymore mines shredded the creature from multiple angles, ball bearings tearing through enhanced flesh. Det cord detonated in sequence, collapsing the ravine walls. C4 charges created a secondary explosion that vaporized vegetation and sent shockwaves through the forest. When the smoke cleared, the Nomu was down. Not dead. Its regeneration was already working, but incapacitated, half buried under rubble, multiple limbs torn off. Izuku didn't give it time to recover. He dropped into the ravine, split soul katana in hand, and drove the blade through the creature's exposed brain. The cursed blade severed more than tissue. It cut the connection between the Nomu's consciousness and its body. Dealt damage that transcended regeneration, the creature twitched once and went still. Permanent death. Izuku pulled the blade free, returned it to storage, and climbed out of the ravine. His ribs ached where the Nomu had thrown him into the tree. Blood seeped from shallow cuts across his arms and face. His breathing was slightly elevated, but he'd won. Behind him, blue flames roared. Dabi had followed the explosion, was now standing at the ravine's edge, staring at the destroyed Nomu. "You actually killed it," the villain said, sounding genuinely surprised. "All for One said you were dangerous, but I didn't really believe." Izuku threw a knife. Dabi dodged, but the blade grazed his shoulder, drawing blood. "Talking is a weakness," Izuku said flatly. "It tells your opponent you're not committed to killing them yet." He pulled a pistol from the cursed worm and fired 3 shots. Dabi created a flame shield, the bullets vaporizing before impact. Guns? Really? That's... The flame shield dropped. Izuku was already moving, closing the distance while Dabi was focused on the pistol. The inverted spear thrust toward the villain's chest. Dabi twisted desperately, the spear piercing his shoulder instead of his heart. Nullification rippled through his quirk, flames sputtering. Izuku followed with a palm strike to Dabi's solar plexus, dropping the villain to his knees. You talk too much. Izuku repeated, spear at Dabi's throat. Where's the rest of your team? Dabi coughed blood, grinning through the pain. Everywhere. This wasn't about destroying the camp. It was about testing you, seeing what the Sorcerer Killer could really do. His grin widened. Congratulations, you passed. Now All for One knows exactly what he's dealing with. He already knew. That's why he sent the Nomu. The Nomu was just appetizer. Wait till you see what comes next. Purple-black mist swirled around Dabi. Kurogiri's portals. Izuku drove the spear forward, but the villain was already gone, warped away before the blade could finish the job. The mist dispersed, leaving Izuku alone with a destroyed ravine and a dead Nomu. He'd won the engagement, killed the enhanced bioweapon, forced Dabi to retreat. But the League had achieved their objective. They'd tested his capabilities, measured his responses, gathered data for their next attack. This wasn't a defeat for them. It was reconnaissance. Izuku pulled out his phone and checked the emergency network. Reports were flooding in, villains throughout the camp, students scattered, Pussycats and Aizawa engaged on multiple fronts, and one message made his blood run cold. Bakugo captured, League retreating. They'd failed to kill Izuku, so they'd taken a hostage instead, leverage, bait, a way to force engagement on their terms. Izuku started running back toward the camp, analyzing tactical options. The League wouldn't kill Bakugo immediately. He was more valuable alive as bait. They'd take him to their base, use him to draw out heroes, create an ambush scenario, standard hostage-taking protocol, which meant Izuku had a limited window to track them before they went underground. By the time he reached the camp, the attack was over. Fires smoldered in the forest. Students huddled together, some injured, all traumatized. Aizawa was coordinating with the Pussycats, trying to account for everyone. Midoriya! Mandalay spotted him, rushed over. Thank God. We thought, where were you? Killing a Nomu. He scanned the area, counting students. Casualties? Minor injuries, mostly, but Bakugo, I know. The League took him. Izuku's green eyes were calculating, cold. Where did they portal from? The North Training Ground. Kurogiri appeared, grabbed Bakugo mid-fight, and warped away before we could stop them. North Training Ground. Izuku oriented himself, plotting vectors. Kurogiri's portals had limited range. He'd seen that during the USJ attack. The villain could warp across the city, but doing so required line of sight or prior knowledge of the destination, which meant the League's base was somewhere within Kurogiri's maximum range of this location, Hosu City, Kamino Ward. Maybe Yokohama. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. Not to heroes. To contacts from his mercenary days, information brokers, underworld sources, people who tracked villain movements for profit. What are you doing? Aizawa had approached, his erasure scarf unwound but ready. The heroes are handling this. We've already contacted. The heroes will take too long. By the time they organize a raid, the League will have moved Bakugo somewhere untraceable. Izuku didn't look up from his phone. I'm tracking them now while the trail is fresh. You are not going after them alone. Watch me. Aizawa's scarf lashed out, wrapping around Izuku's arm. You're a student. This isn't your. Izuku pulled the inverted spear and pressed it against the scarf. Nullification rippled through the capture weapon, turning it from enhanced fiber to regular cloth. He tore free easily. I'm not your student, Izuku said, voice flat. I'm a mercenary on loan to UA. My contract says I provide security consulting and eliminate threats. The League is a threat. Bakugo is. He paused, searching for the right word. Acceptable collateral that shouldn't be abandoned. It was the closest thing to caring he could articulate. Aizawa studied him for a long moment. If you go after them, you'll be operating outside hero regulations. The HPSC can file a complaint with my corpse. Izuku's phone buzzed. One of his contacts had responded. Possible League safe house in Kamino Ward. Unconfirmed but worth investigating, he started walking toward the forest perimeter. Midoriya. Aizawa's voice stopped him. At least wait for backup. We can... No. Every minute wasted is a minute the League has to prepare. Izuku didn't turn around. Tell the other students I'm handling this. They'll believe you. He disappeared into the forest before Aizawa could respond. Kamino Ward at night was a different world. The industrial district had been in decline for years. Factories shuttered, warehouses abandoned, crime festering in the neglected spaces. Perfect hiding spot for villains. Izuku moved through the shadows like death itself. No presence, no sound, invisible to normal observation. His contacts had narrowed the League's position to 3 possible locations. He would check each one systematically. The first warehouse was empty. Abandoned months ago, dust thick on every surface, no signs of recent occupation. The second had squatters, homeless people using it for shelter. He left them alone. Not his problem. The third warehouse was different. Fresh tire tracks in the dust, recently disturbed crates, the faint smell of cigarette smoke and burnt fabric, and something else, a presence that made his combat instincts scream. The League was here. Izuku circled the perimeter, mapping entry points and guard positions. 2 sentries outside, low-level thugs, probably hired muscle rather than core League members. No sign of Kurogiri's portals, which meant either the warper wasn't present or was conserving energy. He moved to the eastern wall, found a rusted access panel, and pried it open with a crowbar from the cursed worm's storage. The metal groaned, but didn't break. He slipped inside, closing the panel behind him. The warehouse interior was vast, poorly lit, filled with crates and industrial equipment. Izuku moved between shadows, every sense alert. Voices echoed from deeper in, casual conversation, laughter, the arrogance of people who thought they were safe. He reached a vantage point overlooking the main floor and saw them. The League of Villains. Shigaraki scratching at his neck with those disturbing hand-covered limbs. Toga giggling about something incomprehensible. Twice arguing with himself. Compress lounging against a crate. Spinner checking his weapon collection. And Bakugo, bound to a chair in the center, explosions popping uselessly from his restrained palms. "Come on," Bakugo was shouting. "You think some chains are gonna hold me? I'll blast this whole place too." "Save your energy," Shigaraki interrupted, his voice raspy and disturbed. "We're not here to fight you. We're here to recruit you." "Recruit?" Bakugo laughed, the sound manic. "You brain-dead morons think I'd join you? You're powerful, aggressive, you hate the current hero system." Shigaraki leaned closer, hands reaching toward Bakugo's face. "We watched the sports festival, saw how they restrained you like an animal on that podium. The heroes fear your strength, they'll always fear it. But with us, you could be free." "I don't give a shit about your wannabe philosophy." Bakugo's explosions intensified despite the restraints. "The only thing I hate more than fake heroes is actual villains, so why don't you decay these chains and fight me properly, you crusty bastard." Toga clapped excitedly. "He's so feisty. Can we keep him even if he says no? Please, Tamura?" "The master wants him recruited, not kidnapped," Shigaraki said, scratching harder. "But if he refuses, well, killing him sends a message too." Izuku had heard enough. He pulled the split-soul katana and dropped from the rafters. The blade carved through Twice's shoulder as Izuku landed, the cursed edge severing flesh and the villain's duplication quirk simultaneously. Twice screamed and collapsed, unable to create clones while the soul-level damage persisted. Spinner reacted fastest, multiple blades drawn and thrown. Izuku deflected them with the katana, the cursed steel cutting through normal weapons like paper. He closed the distance to compress, drove a palm strike into the villain's solar plexus, and threw him into a crate before the magician could activate his compression quirk. 3 seconds. 3 villains down. "Ah! Midoriya?" Bakugo's eyes widened in genuine shock. "Shut up." Izuku moved toward the restrained student, katana ready to cut the chains. Purple-black mist erupted between them. Kurogiri had been hiding, waiting for exactly this moment. "I'm afraid we can't allow that." A portal opened beneath Izuku's feet. He jumped clear, but more portals spawned around him. Kurogiri had learned from previous encounters, was using multiple warps to trap rather than transport. Izuku threw a flashbang into the nearest portal. It emerged from another portal directly in front of Kurogiri, detonating in the warper's face. The mist villain recoiled, portals destabilizing. Shigaraki rushed forward, hands outstretched, decay activating. Everything he touched crumbled to dust. Crates, concrete floor, industrial equipment. Izuku switched to the inverted spear and thrust toward Shigaraki's center mass. The villain twisted, hands grabbing the spear's shaft. Decay rippled across the ornate blade and stopped. The inverted spear's nullification shut down Shigaraki's quirk on contact. The weapon didn't decay, didn't even show damage. Shigaraki's eyes widened behind the hand covering his face. What? Izuku yanked the spear free, rotated it, and drove the butt into Shigaraki's knee. The joint hyperextended with a wet crack. Shigaraki fell, screaming. Toga lunged from the shadows, knife aimed at Izuku's throat. He caught her wrist mid-thrust, twisted until bones ground together, and threw her into Compress, who was just recovering from the earlier palm strike. Movement behind him. Spinner with a sword, trying to capitalize on Izuku being momentarily engaged. Izuku pulled the chain of 1,000 miles with his free hand and whipped it backward without looking, the chain wrapped around Spinner's sword arm. Izuku yanked, pulling the lizard villain off balance, then followed with a knife throw that embedded in Spinner's shoulder. The villain collapsed, cursing. 6 seconds. 6 villains engaged. None dead yet, but all incapacitated or reeling, but Kurogiri had recovered from the flashbang. Portals erupted throughout the warehouse, dozens of them, creating a maze of warps that made movement unpredictable. "You've made a mistake coming here alone, Sorcerer Killer," Kurogiri's voice echoed from multiple portals. "We prepared for you this time." The eastern wall exploded inward, a massive shape shouldered through the rubble. Another Nomu, even larger than the one at the training camp. This one had multiple arms, exposed musculature, and eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. "Grappler," Kurogiri announced. "Enhanced strength, regeneration, adhesive with quirk that makes escape impossible once it touches you, and a berserker enhancement that increases power when damaged. All for 1 second gift for you," the Nomu charged. Izuku threw himself backward, but Kurogiri's portals redirected his movement, warping him directly into the creature's path. Massive hands grabbed Izuku's torso. The adhesive quirk activated instantly. His skin stuck to the Nomu's palms, grip unbreakable through normal means. The creature lifted him, began to squeeze. Ribs creaked. Pain lanced through his chest. The Nomu's strength was overwhelming, enhanced beyond anything natural. Izuku pulled a combat knife from the cursed worm and drove it into the Nomu's wrist. The blade pierced, enhanced flesh, drew black blood. The creature's grip tightened in response, berserker enhancement activating. Pain didn't work. Conventional weapons didn't work. The adhesive made escape through strength impossible, so Izuku used the inverted spear instead. He stabbed the ornate blade into the Nomu's forearm. Nullification rippled through the creature's quirk system. For a crucial instant, the adhesive failed. Izuku tore free, skin raw where it had been stuck, and rolled clear. The Nomu roared, all 6 arms reaching for him. He countered with the split soul katana, severing one arm at the elbow. The limb fell, spurting black blood. The Nomu regenerated it within seconds. "Persistent," Izuku muttered. He pulled an incendiary grenade from the cursed worm and threw it into the Nomu's face. The explosion was bright and hot, white phosphorus igniting and melting flesh. The Nomu screamed, thrashing blindly. Izuku used the distraction to cut Bakugo's restraints with the katana. "Move!" Izuku snapped. Bakugo, for once, didn't argue. He blasted himself backward with explosions, putting distance between himself and the burning Nomu. Kurogiri's portals surrounded them. "You freed the hostage, but you're still trapped. Surrender now, and we might let you." Izuku pulled his pistol and fired through 3 different portals. The bullets emerged from unpredictable angles, one of them grazing Kurogiri's misty form and forcing the villain to destabilize momentarily. The portals collapsed. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's arm and sprinted for the eastern wall, the hole the Nomu had created. "What the hell is your plan?" Bakugo shouted. "Escape, regroup, return with overwhelming force." "That's the shittiest plan I've ever..." The ceiling exploded, not from the inside, from above. Heroes descended through the hole, All Might in the lead, his massive form radiating power. Behind him, Endeavor wreathed in flames, Edgeshot compressed into a thin blade, Gran Torino moving at impossible speeds. "Have no fear," All Might's voice boomed through the warehouse. "For I am." Izuku didn't wait to hear the rest. He pulled Bakugo through the eastern wall and disappeared into the night while the heroes engaged the League. Behind them, the battle erupted. All Might's United States of Smash leveled half the warehouse. Endeavor's flames clashed with what remained of Dabi's defenses. Edgeshot pierced through Kurogiri's portals faster than the villain could redirect. But Izuku wasn't watching. He was running, pulling a confused and protesting Bakugo through Kamino Ward's industrial labyrinth, putting distance between themselves and the chaos. They reached an abandoned factory 3 blocks away. Izuku finally released Bakugo's arm. What the actual fuck? Bakugo exploded, literally, small detonations popping from his palms in agitation. You just bailed on the pro heroes? They don't need me. All Might can handle the League. Izuku leaned against a wall, catching his breath. His ribs ached where the Nomu had grabbed him. Blood seeped from the adhesive damage on his torso. You're injured, you hollow-eyed bastard. I've had worse. Izuku pulled out his phone, checking news feeds. The battle was already trending. Heroes versus villains in Kamino Ward, live updates, civilian cameras capturing everything. All Might was winning. Of course he was. The symbol of peace existed to win these confrontations, to reassure the public that heroes would always triumph. But Izuku saw what the cameras didn't show. All Might's movements were slightly slower than at the USJ. His punches had fractionally less power. The injuries from his fight with All For One years ago were catching up to him. The symbol of peace was dying. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually. And when he fell, the entire hero system would shake. Why'd you come for me? Bakugo asked suddenly, his usual aggression muted. You hate everyone. Don't give a shit about hero crap, so why risk your ass for your acceptable collateral? Izuku interrupted. I told Aizawa the same thing. The League taking you was inefficient. I corrected the inefficiency. That's the most emotionally constipated way of saying you don't. Izuku's green eyes were cold. We're not friends, Bakugo. We're not even allies. You happened to be in a situation I could resolve, so I resolved it. Nothing more. Bakugo stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed, short and harsh. You're such a terrible liar. I'm not. If you really didn't give a shit, you would have waited for the heroes. Let them handle it properly, by the book, no risk to yourself. Bakugo's red eyes were sharp, analytical in a way people rarely gave him credit for. But you went in alone, fought multiple villains, got injured rescuing someone you claim not to care about. That's not efficiency. That's something else. Izuku didn't respond. Couldn't, because Bakugo was right and wrong simultaneously. He had gone in alone for tactical reasons. Speed over caution, direct action over bureaucratic delay. But he'd also gone because leaving Bakugo with the League felt wrong, not in a moral sense, just wrong. Like abandoning Eri to overhaul would have been wrong, like letting the League use people as disposable pawns was wrong. Not heroism. Something else. Something he didn't have words for. Whatever, Bakugo said finally. Just thanks for getting me out of that shit. It was possibly the first genuine thanks Bakugo had ever given anyone. Izuku just nodded. They sat in silence, listening to distant explosions as the heroes finished the battle. Eventually, Izuku's phone rang, Aizawa demanding to know where they were and threatening various punishments for unauthorized vigilante action. We're fine, Izuku said. Bakugo is recovered. We'll return to UA tomorrow. He hung up before Aizawa could argue. The aftermath of Kamino Ward was complicated. All For One had been captured, again, imprisoned in Tartarus with every security measure available. The League of Villains had scattered, key members escaping through Kurogiri's portals before the heroes could apprehend them all. All Might's power was finally publicly revealed to be failing. The symbol of peace could no longer maintain his muscular form for extended periods. His time as the #1 hero was ending, and Izuku was called before the HPSC to explain his unauthorized raid. The meeting room was sterile, corporate, designed to intimidate. 3 commission officials sat across from him, suited bureaucrats who'd never fought a real battle, making decisions about people who had. Mr. Midoriya, the lead official said, her voice professionally cold. Your actions in Kamino Ward were reckless, illegal, and endangered both yourself and the student you rescued. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Bakugo is alive and unharmed. The League's recruitment attempt failed. I consider that a success. You consider... She took a breath, visibly controlling her anger. You are a student, not a licensed hero. You have no authority to conduct raids, engage villains, or operate independently. Your actions could have. My actions saved time and prevented the League from moving Bakugo to a more secure location. Izuku's tone was flat, matter of fact. The hero's official raid would have taken hours to organize. By then, Bakugo would have been gone. I made the tactically sound decision. Tactically sound? Another official leaned forward. You engaged multiple villains alone. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, and Bakugo is free. Results matter more than hypothetical risks. The lead official's jaw tightened. Your contract with UA specified security consulting, not active combat operations. You've exceeded your authority repeatedly. The USJ, Hosu, now this. We're considering terminating the arrangement entirely. Do it. Izuku met her eyes without flinching. Void the contract. I'll operate independently, without UA's restrictions. Silence. The officials exchanged glances. They'd expect defensiveness, apologies, promises to behave, not a direct challenge. You don't understand the position you're in, the lead official said slowly. We could charge you with vigilantism, unauthorized quirk usage, interfering with hero operations. You'd be giving me ammunition to expose UA's arrangement with a known mercenary. Izuku leaned back in his chair, posture relaxed but eyes calculating. I have documentation of everything. Every contract, every surveillance assignment, every time Nezu asked me to handle situations for our heroes couldn't be seen handling. You charge me, I release it all. Wonder what the media would do with that story. Another silence. Longer this time. You're bluffing, the second official said, but uncertainty colored his voice. Try me. The lead official's expression was ice. You think you're clever, untouchable, but you're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Midoriya. The commission has resources you can't imagine. All for One had resources I couldn't imagine. I survived him twice. Your bureaucrats playing at power. I'm a killer playing at civilization. Izuku stood, the meeting clearly over in his mind. Keep the contract or terminate it. Either way, I'm done with this conversation. He walked out before they could respond. Outside the meeting room, Nezu was waiting, sipping tea with that unsettling smile. That went well. You were listening. Of course. This is my school, Mr. Midoriya. Everything that happens here, I know about. The principal's eyes glittered. You handled them perfectly. They'll keep the contract because exposing the arrangement would damage them more than you. I know. Izuku started walking toward the exit. Was there something you needed, Principal? Just curious about your plans. Now that All for One is imprisoned, the League is scattered, and you've proven yourself capable of operating against high-level threats, what will you do? Izuku paused. Train. Prepare. All for One being in Tartarus doesn't mean he's gone. He'll have contingencies, and the League won't disappear just because they lost one battle. Very pragmatic. Nezu walked beside him, tiny steps matching Izuku's longer stride. But I sense something else has changed. You went back for Bakugo, not because you had to, because you chose to. That's new. It was tactically sound too. Mr. Midoriya, we've known each other long enough to skip the deflections. Nezu's tone was gentler now. You're starting to care. Not broadly, not idealistically, but specifically, about individuals. First Eri, now Bakugo. Perhaps others in Class 1A that you won't acknowledge. This is progress. Progress toward what? Toward being more than just a survivor. Nezu finished his tea. You've spent your entire life in survival mode, fighting to stay alive, to stay ahead of threats, to never be vulnerable. But survival isn't the same as living, and I think, deep down, you're starting to realize that. Izuku didn't respond. The observation cut too close to thoughts he'd been burying since returning to UA. Take your time, Nezu said. Growth isn't comfortable, but it is inevitable for those strong enough to allow it. He walked away, leaving Izuku alone with uncomfortable thoughts. The provisional license exam came weeks later. Thousands of students from hero schools across Japan, all competing for limited licenses. The exam had two phases, combat elimination and rescue operations. Izuku found the entire process tedious. Phase 1 was a free-for-all, where students tried to hit targets on each other's bodies while protecting their own. Strategy, teamwork, and quirk usage all tested simultaneously. It lasted 12 minutes for Izuku. He moved through the testing ground like a scythe through wheat, hitting targets with throwing knives before opponents even registered his presence. Students from other schools fell in rapid succession, their quirks useless against someone they couldn't track. By the 8th minute, his target count was high enough that other students just avoided him entirely, creating a bubble of empty space wherever he moved. Boring. Phase 2 was worse. Rescue operations, helping actor victims, coordinating with teammates, demonstrating heroic values. Izuku performed mechanically, carried victims to safety, applied first aid, coordinated with other students through terse commands, did everything the evaluators wanted. But there was no emotion behind it, no genuine concern, just clinical execution of required tasks. The evaluators noticed. Midoriya Izuku once said during the review, "Your technical performance is flawless. Your rescue operations were efficient and effective. But I lack the proper heroic spirit," Izuku interrupted. "I don't comfort victims, don't inspire hope. I just do the job and move on." The evaluator looked uncomfortable. "That's not how I would phrase it, but yes, being a hero requires more than just competence. It requires compassion, connection with the people you're saving." "I saved them. That should be sufficient." "It's not about what's sufficient. It's about..." The evaluator sighed. "You pass. Barely. But you'll need remedial training in heroic values and victim interaction. Report to the specified facility next month." Izuku threw the remedial training notice in the trash the moment he left the exam building. He had a provisional license now. That was the goal. Everything else was performative nonsense that didn't affect actual capability. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Impressive performance. You're wasted on heroism. Contact me if you want real work again. An old friend." Izuku deleted the message. His mercenary contacts were persistent, but he'd made his choice. For now, he was committed to UA, to the arrangement with Nezu, to the fragile structure that kept All for One's attention manageable. Later, maybe, he'd return to the shadows. But not yet. The Shiha Saikai investigation began with a tip from an informant. Sir Night-Eye, All Might's former sidekick, had been tracking a Yakuza organization involved in illegal quirk research. The Shiha Saikai, led by a man named Overhaul, had been quiet for years but recently began making moves, acquiring resources, recruiting members, expanding territory. Night-Eye suspected they were developing something dangerous. He'd gathered evidence, built a case, and was preparing for an official hero raid. Then he requested Izuku for his internship program. "Why me?" Izuku asked during their first meeting at Night-Eye's agency. The pro-hero was tall, angular, dressed in a suit that looked uncomfortable. His quirk, foresight, let him see the future of anyone he touched. He'd seen Izuku's future, and clearly didn't like what he'd seen. "Because Nezu recommended you," Night-Eye said, voice tight with professional courtesy. "He said your particular skills would be valuable for this investigation. Infiltration, observation, tactical assessment. And I used my quirk on you the moment you walked in here." Night-Eye's expression was grim. "Your future is unclear, dark, filled with violence and decisions that could go either way. You're either going to be a great hero or a great catastrophe. I want to determine which. And if you don't like what you determine, then I'll stop you, personally." Izuku almost smiled. "You can try." They stared at each other for a long moment, wills clashing, neither backing down. Finally, Night-Eye looked away. "The Shiha Saikai investigation takes priority. Personal conflicts can wait." He pulled out a file. "Here's what we know." The briefing was thorough. The Shiha Saikai was old Yakuza, traditional organized crime trying to survive in the quirk era. Their current leader, Overhaul, was young but ruthless. His quirk let him disassemble and reassemble matter, powerful for both construction and destruction. They were manufacturing something quirk-related. Night-Eye's investigation had uncovered purchases of medical equipment, recruitment of scientists, and mysterious shipments from their compound. "We need more intel before the official raid," Night-Eye concluded. "That's where you come in. Infiltrate the compound, observe their operations, report back. No combat unless absolutely necessary." "Understood." "I mean it, Midoriya. This is reconnaissance, not a kill mission. Observe and extract." "Can you do that?" Izuku nodded. But they both knew it was a lie. The infiltration began that night. The Shiha Saikai compound was a converted warehouse in an industrial district, surrounded by high walls and patrolling guards. Security was professional but not overwhelming. Yakuza taking themselves seriously but not expecting actual threats. Mistake. Izuku scaled the eastern wall after midnight, moving silently, no presence to give him away. Guards passed within feet, never noticing the shadow that slipped past them. Inside the compound, he found what he was looking for: a laboratory. Through reinforced glass windows, he saw scientists in hazmat suits, complex equipment, centrifuges processing blood samples. And in the center of the room, floating in a medical pod, a small figure, a child, maybe 6 years old, white hair, red eyes, covered in bandages and surgical scars. Izuku's blood went cold. He'd seen abuse before, lived through it in the slums where he'd been abandoned. But this was different. This was systematic, scientific, purposeful torture. Someone was experimenting on that child. He pulled out his phone, took photos through the window, evidence for Night Eye's investigation. Then he started mapping the facility, guard rotations, entry points, structural weaknesses he was preparing to extract when the child's eyes opened. She stared directly at him through the glass, through the shadows, through his lack of presence. Their eyes met, his hollow green, hers terrified red. Then alarms blared. Intruder in Section C. Guards rushed toward his position. Izuku cursed and ran. He'd been too focused on the child, hadn't noticed proximity sensors in the hallway. Amateur mistake. He sprinted through corridors, guards converging, quirks activated, enhanced speed, projectile generation, energy blasts, all useless against someone they couldn't track properly. He reached the eastern wall, climbed it in seconds, and disappeared into the night before they could corner him. Behind him, the compound went into lockdown. Overhaul would know someone had infiltrated. Security would tighten. The investigation was compromised. But Izuku had the photos, had seen the child, had evidence of whatever horror the Shiha Saikai was committing. He returned to Night Eye's agency at dawn, handed over the documentation, and waited for the lecture about getting caught. Instead, Night Eye stared at the photos, his expression growing darker with each image. "They're experimenting on a child," the pro-hero said quietly, "using her quirk to manufacture something. This is..." He looked up, and for the first time, Izuku saw genuine emotion in the analytical hero's eyes. "This is worse than I thought." "What's her quirk?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, they're harvesting it, probably for those mysterious shipments." Night Eye stood, already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling an emergency raid. We hit them tonight before they can move her. They'll have increased security after the infiltration." "I know, but we can't wait. Every day that child spends in their hands is..." Night Eye's jaw tightened. "We're going tonight. Assemble every hero we can mobilize. This ends now." Izuku nodded, but even as they planned, he knew the truth. The official raid would be slow, careful, by the book. Overhaul would have time to prepare, time to move the child, time to destroy evidence. So Izuku made a different plan. He went back that night, alone, not to observe. To end this, the compound security had tripled. Guards everywhere, quirk users on patrol, the laboratory under constant surveillance. Professional response to the previous infiltration didn't matter. Izuku had the inverted spear to nullify quirks, the split soul katana to cut through enhanced defenses, and most importantly, the cold willingness to kill everyone between him and that child. He entered through the sewers, an access point he'd noted during the first infiltration. The tunnels were dark, cramped, perfect for someone who moved silently. He emerged in the compound's basement, killed the first guard with a knife to the brainstem. Quick, quiet, professional. The body didn't have time to scream. The second guard heard something, turned to investigate. Izuku's hand covered his mouth as the blade slid between his ribs, puncturing the heart. The guard slumped, dead before his quirk could activate. Third guard was smarter, activated his quirk immediately. Some kind of sensory enhancement. "There's someone." The split soul katana took his head off before he could finish the sentence. Blood sprayed across concrete walls. Alarms should have gone off. But Izuku had already disabled the security system during his previous infiltration, planting a virus that would activate when he triggered it remotely. Every camera went dark. Every sensor failed. The compound was blind. Now it was just slaughter. He moved through corridors like death itself. Guards fell, throats cut, spines severed, skulls caved in. Quirks activated desperately, but the inverted spear nullified every power it touched. The split soul katana ignored every defense. A Yakuza member with enhanced strength tried to grapple him. Izuku drove the katana through his chest, the cursed blade cutting soul and flesh simultaneously. The man fell, eyes vacant, more than dead. Another tried acid generation. Izuku threw a knife into his throat before the quirk could fully activate. Blood and acid mixed on the floor. A speedster rushed him from behind. Izuku sensed the displaced air, sidestepped, and clotheslined the villain with the chain of 1,000 miles. The chain wrapped around the speedster's neck, momentum doing the rest. Vertebrae snapped. 5 minutes. 17 bodies. All permanent. He reached the laboratory. Inside, scientists scrambled, trying to evacuate the child. Overhaul stood in the center, his expression cold and clinical despite the carnage. "The Sorcerer Killer," Overhaul said, voice muffled by his plague mask. "I was wondering when you'd appear. The heroes would never move this fast. Release the child. She's not a child, she's a resource, a tool for restoring the world to how it should be, before quirks ruined everything." Overhaul's hands came up, quirk activating. "But I suppose you wouldn't understand that. You're just another violent thug playing at righteousness." The floor erupted beneath Izuku's feet. Overhaul's matter manipulation reshaped concrete into spikes, walls, barriers. The entire laboratory became a death trap in seconds. Izuku used the inverted spear to nullify the constructs he touched, cutting through the reshaped matter. But Overhaul was fast, creating faster than Izuku could destroy. "Impressive weapon," Overhaul observed, staying at range. "Nullifies quirks on contact. But you can't touch everything at once." The walls closed in. Spikes erupted from every surface. Izuku pulled explosives from the cursed worm and detonated them, blowing holes in the constructs. Smoke filled the room. Overhaul couldn't see his target clearly. Izuku used the chaos to close distance. Split soul katana ready, the blade thrust toward Overhaul's chest. The Yakuza leader clapped his hands together, deconstructing and reconstructing himself to dodge. He appeared 10 feet away, unharmed. "You can't kill what you can't touch," Overhaul said. "Wrong." Izuku threw the inverted spear, the ornate blade whistled through the air. Overhaul tried to deconstruct it, but nullification prevented his quirk from affecting the weapon. He dodged physically instead, barely, the spear grazing his ribs. Izuku was already charging, split soul katana in both hands. Overhaul reconstructed barriers, but the cursed blade cut through them like they weren't there. They engaged in close combat. Overhaul reconstructing defensively, creating obstacles and distance. Izuku pursuing relentlessly, cutting through every defense, wounds accumulating on the Yakuza leader. "Why are you doing this?" Overhaul demanded, breathing hard, bleeding from multiple cuts. "She's nothing. Just a little girl with a broken quirk. She's a person." Izuku's voice was cold. "Not a resource, not a tool, a person, and you tortured her. For the greater good, to create a cure for quirks, to restore humanity to..." Izuku drove the split soul katana through Overhaul's right hand, pinning it to a reconstructed wall. The cursed blade severed not just flesh, but the connection between Overhaul's quirk factor and his body. Overhaul screamed. His quirk sputtered, failed. He tried to reconstruct, to heal, to escape. Nothing worked. Izuku pulled the blade free and did the same to Overhaul's left hand. "Your quirk is gone," Izuku said flatly. "Permanently. The split soul katana doesn't just cut flesh. It cuts the connection between body and power. You're quirkless now." Overhaul stared at his ruined hands, horror dawning. You can't. You experimented on a child, made her a living factory for your delusional philosophy. This is mercy compared to what you deserve." Izuku left him there, crying over his useless hands, and approached the medical pod. The child, Eri, according to the labels on the equipment, stared at him through the glass. Her red eyes were wide, terrified, uncertain. Izuku pulled the inverted spear from where it had embedded in the wall and used it to shatter the pod. Liquid drained. Eri fell forward, and he caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing. Malnourished, covered in scars, trembling. "You're safe now," Izuku said, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "They won't hurt you anymore." Eri looked up at him. At the blood on his hands, the bodies scattered throughout the facility, the violence that had freed her. She should have been terrified, should have screamed, pulled away, seen him as another monster. Instead, she reached up and touched his face with small, scarred fingers. "You saved me," she whispered. Something inside Izuku's chest tightened. An emotion he didn't have a name for, hadn't felt since he was 4 years old and his parents abandoned him. Protectiveness. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her tiny form. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "Good. We're leaving." He carried her through the compound, past the bodies, past Overhaul, still sobbing over his ruined hands, past the security systems that were starting to reboot. By the time the official hero raid arrived, Night Eye, Ryukyu, Fat Gum, and others, Izuku was gone. He brought Eri to UA directly, bypassing hospitals and official channels, and demanded Recovery Girl help her. The elderly healer took one look at Eri's condition and went pale. What happened to this child? Experimentation. Torture. The Shiha Saikai used her quirk to manufacture something. Izuku set Eri down gently on an examination table. Fix her. Please. Recovery Girl worked through the night, healing the physical damage, stabilizing Eri's quirk that had been overused to the point of dysfunction, providing nutrition and care. Izuku sat outside the medical ward, back against the wall, exhausted. Nezu found him there at dawn. You went into the Shiha Saikai compound alone, the principal said. No accusation in his tone, just observation. Yes. Killed multiple Yakuza members. Yes. Permanently destroyed Overhaul's quirk. Yes. And rescued a child who was being tortured for her quirk's properties. Nezu sat beside him, tiny body barely reaching Izuku's shoulder. The heroes are confused. Overhaul is in custody, his hands ruined, babbling about a devil with a cursed sword. The other Shiha Saikai members are either dead or fleeing. The entire organization has collapsed overnight. Good. The HPSC wants to know who is responsible. Night Eye suspects you but has no proof. Let them suspect. Let them suspect. Nezu was quiet for a moment. You could have waited for the official raid. Let the heroes handle it properly. Why didn't you? Izuku thought about Eri's terrified red eyes, about the scars covering her small body, about the medical pod where she'd floated, a living experiment. Because the heroes would have taken too long, and every minute she spent in that place was another minute of torture. His green eyes were distant, seeing something from long ago. I know what it's like to be abandoned, to have no one come for you. I wasn't going to let that happen to her. So you went alone, knowing it would violate every rule, every regulation, every restriction the HPSC has placed on you. Nezu's smile was knowing. You're changing, Mr. Midoriya, whether you admit it or not. I just did what was necessary. No, you did what was right. There's a difference. Nezu stood, brushing off his tiny suit. Eri will stay at UA under our protection. Recovery Girl says she'll make a full physical recovery, though the psychological damage will take longer. She'll need someone she trusts, someone who understands what she's been through. I'm not. You're the only one she'll trust, Nezu interrupted gently. She's already asked for you 3 times. You saved her, protected her, proved through violence that she matters. To her, you're not the Sorcerer Killer. You're her hero. The word felt wrong, painful, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. But when Recovery Girl opened the door and Eri's small voice called out, Izuku? Uncertain, hopeful, needing reassurance, he found himself walking into the medical ward anyway. She was sitting up in bed, bandages covering most of her small body, red eyes searching for him. When she saw him, she smiled, a genuine, innocent, trusting smile. You came back, she said. I said I would. Others said things too. Then they hurt me, or left me, or used me. Her voice was small but steady. You're different. Maybe. She reached out with one scarred hand. Izuku took it gently, careful not to hurt her. Will you stay? Eri asked. Please? I'm scared when you're not here. Izuku looked at Nezu, then at Recovery Girl, then back at the small child who'd somehow found trust despite everything the world had done to her. I'll stay, he said. And for the first time in his life, Midoriya Izuku meant it as more than tactical positioning. The weeks following Eri's rescue were strange. UA had become her sanctuary. She stayed in special quarters near the medical ward under constant supervision. Recovery Girl monitored her physical health. Counselors worked on her psychological trauma. Security was tripled to prevent any retaliation from the remnants of the Shiha Saikai. And Izuku visited every day, not because he had to, because Eri asked for him. And somehow, refusing felt worse than the discomfort of actually spending time with a traumatized child. What's your quirk? She asked one afternoon while they sat in the medical ward's garden. I don't have one. Her eyes widened. Really? But you're so strong. Quirks aren't everything. I trained my body instead. He demonstrated by jumping to a tree branch 15 feet up, then landing lightly. Humans can do impressive things without supernatural powers. But everyone says quirks make you special, that without one, you're... She trailed off, remembering that she'd been told her quirk made her a monster. A curse. Something to be used and discarded. People say a lot of things. Most of it is wrong. Izuku sat back down beside her. Your quirk doesn't define you, like neither does my lack of one. We're more than the powers we have or don't have. Then what are we? Whatever we choose to be. She thought about that for a while, small face serious. I choose to be someone who helps people, like you helped me. I'm not a good role model. You saved me. That makes you good enough. Her logic was simple, childish, based on limited experience, but it was also undeniable. He had saved her. Despite everything else, he was mercenary, killer, emotionally damaged survivor. He had done that one good thing. Maybe Nezu was right. Maybe he was changing. The thought was uncomfortable. The UA Cultural Festival approached as autumn settled over the school. After the stress of villain attacks, kidnappings, and investigations, the faculty decided students needed something normal, something joyful, a celebration of culture, creativity, and community. Class 1A chose to perform, a concert with dancing, coordinated by Jiro's musical talent and Ashido's choreography. Even Bakugo participated, playing drums with aggressive enthusiasm. Izuku predictably refused to perform. I'm security, not entertainment. Come on, Midoriya, Ashido pleaded. Everyone's participating. Even Todoroki learned to dance. Todoroki is less socially damaged than I am. That's not an accomplishment. But no. She pouted, but eventually gave up, recognizing that some battles weren't worth fighting. Instead, Izuku patrolled the perimeter during festival preparations. He checked sightlines, monitored entry points, watched for potential threats. The League was still active, All for One's influence still reaching from Tartarus. An event this public, this crowded, would be an irresistible target. You're very dedicated, a voice observed. Izuku turned to find a stranger. Older man, polite smile, dressed too formally for a school festival. His instincts screamed danger before his conscious mind processed why. Who are you? Izuku's hand moved toward a hidden weapon. Just an admirer of the arts. La Brava and I were hoping to film the festivities for our channel. The man, gentle criminal, Izuku's research identified him seconds later, gestured to his companion, a small woman with a camera, gentle criminal. B-list villain with elasticity-based quirk. Non-violent, theatrical, obsessed with fame and artistic expression. Not a real threat under normal circumstances, but this wasn't normal circumstances. The festival is closed to outside visitors, Izuku said flatly. Leave. Ah, but we've come so far. Surely one small video wouldn't. Izuku pulled a knife. Leave. Now, or I'll make you leave. Gentle's expression shifted from theatrical to genuine surprise. He'd expected resistance from heroes, not a student willing to escalate to violence immediately. There's no need for 3 seconds. Izuku's green eyes were hollow, calculating. Then I assume you're a threat and respond accordingly. Gentle, La Brava whispered nervously. Maybe we should... Fine, we're leaving. Gentle backed away, hands raised. No need for violence. We'll find another venue for our art. They retreated quickly. Izuku watched until they were out of sight, then radioed Aizawa about the attempted infiltration. Later, during the actual performance, he stood on a rooftop overlooking the festival grounds. Class 1A performed below. Music and dancing and joy. The crowd cheered. Students celebrated. And in the audience, visible through binoculars, Eri sat with Aizawa. She was smiling, genuinely smiling, watching the performance with wide-eyed wonder. She was healing. Slowly, but measurably, Izuku felt that uncomfortable tightness in his chest again. The feeling he didn't have a name for, but was starting to recognize. Satisfaction that wasn't tactical. Pleasure that wasn't combat-related. Something softer. He buried it quickly and returned to his patrol. But the feeling lingered. The joint training exercise with Class 1B came in early winter. Nezu had arranged it to test both classes' development, push them to improve through competition. Each class would be divided into teams and face each other in simulated combat scenarios. Izuku was paired with Todoroki, Ida, and Yaoyorozu against Class 1B's team led by Juzo Hananuki. The match was supposed to demonstrate teamwork and coordination. It lasted 4 minutes. Izuku's team moved with precision that surprised everyone, including themselves. Todoroki created ice walls exactly where Izuku needed them, without verbal communication. Ida executed flanking maneuvers perfectly timed to Izuku's primary assault. Yaoyorozu produced support items that complemented Izuku's combat style. They'd learned to read him, to predict his movements, anticipate his tactics, coordinate without explicit instructions. Class 1B never stood a chance. Winner, Team Midoriya. Midnight announced, clearly impressed. Afterward, Todoroki approached Izuku. We work well together now. You work less badly than before, Izuku corrected. That's growth. From both of us. Todoroki's expression was almost warm. You've taught us to be better, faster, more efficient, less naive. I taught you to survive. That's different from being better. Is it? Todoroki looked toward where the rest of their team was celebrating. We're stronger because of you. Not just physically, mentally. We think more tactically, act more decisively, question more critically. That could make you worse heroes. Heroes are supposed to be inspiring, hopeful, compassionate. Maybe. Or maybe the world needs heroes who can also be warriors when necessary. Todoroki's mismatched eyes held Izuku's green ones. Thank you for not going easy on us, for treating us like we could become more than sheltered students. He walked away before Izuku could respond. Ida came next, formal as always. Midoriya, your coordination during the exercise was excellent. You trusted us to execute our roles. That's significant development in your teamwork capabilities. I just used available resources efficiently. Call it what you like, but you fought with us, not despite us. That's progress. Ida bowed slightly. I'm honored to be your teammate. Yaoyorozu was last. You're less isolated than when you first came to UA. I'm tactically positioned within a useful resource structure. She smiled. That's a very complicated way of saying you have friends now. I don't. You visit Eri daily. You coordinated perfectly with us today. You went back for Bakugo during Kamino Ward. You're training Shinso in hand-to-hand combat. Her expression was knowing. You care about people now, Midoriya. Even if you won't admit it. She left before he could formulate a counter-argument. Izuku stood alone in the training ground, surrounded by evidence that he'd somehow, despite his best efforts, become part of Class 1A. Not through emotional bonding or friendship, through consistent proximity and shared trials. Through teaching them to survive and learning they could actually be useful. Through finding, against all probability, that he didn't entirely hate being around them, Nezu had been right. He was changing. The realization was deeply uncomfortable, but also not entirely unwelcome. Winter break came and went. Students returned for the spring semester. The school year was progressing toward finals, graduation ceremonies, and the next generation of heroes entering the professional world. Then, the intelligence reports started coming in. Paranormal Liberation Front. A massive villain organization formed from the merger of the League of Villains and the Meta Liberation Army. Hundreds of members, sophisticated leadership, resources that dwarfed anything the League had possessed previously. And their primary goal, according to intercepted communications, complete societal restructuring through the elimination of current hero society, starting with the heroes who'd humiliated them, starting with the Sorcerer Killer. Nezu called an emergency meeting with UA's faculty and key hero agencies. Izuku was included, sitting at the table with pro-heroes who still didn't quite trust him. The Paranormal Liberation Front has consolidated power across multiple prefectures, Nezu explained, displaying intelligence on screens around the room. Their main base is in Jaku City. Our sources indicate they're planning a massive operation within the month. What's their objective? Endeavor demanded, flames flickering with agitation. Chaos, destabilization, and specifically, Nezu looked at Izuku, eliminating threats to All for One's long-term plans. I'm not a threat, Izuku said. I'm a nuisance at best. You've survived 2 encounters with All for One, killed his Nomus, dismantled his operations repeatedly. To him, you're the one person outside All Might who's consistently interfered with his schemes. Nezu's expression was serious. This attack will be aimed at you specifically. They'll use overwhelming force to ensure you don't survive. Then I'll kill them first. Midoriya, Aizawa started, they're villains planning mass murder. I'm the target. Seems simple enough. It's not that simple, Endeavor's flames intensified. This isn't a small operation. We're talking hundreds of enhanced villains, multiple Nomus, coordinated attacks across the country. You can't just watch me. Tension crackled through the room. Endeavor looked ready to argue further. Aizawa was calculating how to prevent Izuku from doing something catastrophic. The other heroes exchanged uncertain glances. Nezu raised a paw. Actually, Mr. Midoriya's aggressive approach may be tactically sound. What? Several heroes spoke simultaneously. The Paranormal Liberation Front expects us to mobilize defensively, coordinate raids through proper channels, take time to organize. They're planning for that. If instead we have our most dangerous asset strike preemptively, Nezu's eyes glittered, we disrupt their timeline and force them to react rather than act. You're suggesting we send a student into a villain stronghold alone? Endeavor looked incredulous. I'm suggesting we send the Sorcerer Killer to do what he does best, eliminate threats before they become unmanageable. Nezu looked at Izuku. Can you infiltrate their base, gather intelligence, and if possible, neutralize key targets? Yes. Just like that? No hesitation? It's what I do. What I've always done. Izuku stood. Give me their location, I'll handle the rest. You'll need support, Aizawa said firmly. This isn't the USJ or Camino ward. This is a fortified base with hundreds of enemies. Support will slow me down. Then it will have to slow you down because I'm not letting you commit suicide. Aizawa's expression was hard. You're still my student, technically, and I don't send students to die. Izuku almost argued. Then he saw the genuine concern in Aizawa's tired eyes. The teacher actually cared. Somehow, despite everything, the exhausted pro-hero had started viewing Izuku as someone worth protecting. It was simultaneously annoying and touching. Fine. Minimal support. No more than 3 people who can keep up. I'll go, Todoroki said immediately. So will I, Bakugo added, grinning viciously. Sounds like a good fight. Ida as well, the class representative stood. You'll need someone for tactical coordination. This isn't a class trip, Endeavor started. They're coming, Izuku said, cutting off the argument. If you try to stop them, they'll just follow anyway. Better to acknowledge it now. Nezu nodded slowly. Very well. Midoriya, Todoroki, Bakugo, Ida, you 4 will form the advanced infiltration team. Your objective, penetrate the Paranormal Liberation Front's base, locate their leadership, and create chaos. The main hero force will assault simultaneously from other vectors, but you'll be targeting the head of the snake. When do we leave? Izuku asked. Tomorrow night. Prepare accordingly. The Paranormal Liberation Front's base was a mansion on the outskirts of Jakku City, converted into a fortress. High walls, armed guards, surveillance systems, professional security that took itself seriously. Izuku and his team, he still refused to call them that, but the terminology was convenient, approached at midnight. Remember the plan, Izuku said quietly. I infiltrate first, disable security systems. You follow 5 minutes later through the breach I create. Todoroki handles crowd control with ice. Bakugo provides explosive support. Ida coordinates movement and handles evacuation if things go wrong. What do you handle? Bakugo asked. Killing. They'd learned not to argue with that response. Izuku moved ahead, disappearing into shadows. His lack of presence made him invisible to normal surveillance. He scaled the eastern wall, dropped into the compound, and began systematically dismantling security. Cameras went dark, motion sensors were disabled, guard patrols were rerouted through false data fed into their communication system. 5 minutes later, the wall exploded inward, not from Izuku's breach, but from Bakugo's impatience. Surprise, bitches! The explosion user charged through, blasting villains who scrambled to respond. Bakugo! Ida's voice crackled over comms. That wasn't the plan. Plans are for people who can't improvise. Izuku sighed. Of course, Bakugo couldn't follow basic infiltration protocols. Of course, he'd turn a stealth operation into a frontal assault. At least it was effective chaos. Todoroki followed through the breach, ice erupting across the compound. Villains found themselves frozen in place or forced to navigate treacherous terrain. Ida provided rear support, evacuating downed villains before they could recover. The attack descended into controlled chaos. Izuku reached the mansion proper, fighting through defenders. The inverted spear nullified quirks. The split soul katana cut through enhanced bodies. Every opponent fell within seconds. He climbed to the 3rd floor, following intelligence that placed the leadership somewhere in the upper levels. The door at the end of the hall radiated menace. Izuku kicked it open. Inside, waiting for him, was Tomura Shigaraki, but not the Shigaraki he'd fought before. This version was enhanced, transformed. His body was larger, more muscular. His hands no longer wore the severed hand decorations. Those had been replaced with actual gauntlets. Multiple quirks flickered around him visibly, all for one successor, fully realized. Sorcerer Killer, Shigaraki rasped, his voice deeper, more controlled than before. I've been waiting for you. You've gotten stronger. All for One gave me his power, not just a copy, the real thing. He transferred everything to me before his imprisonment. I'm him now. His will, his strength, his purpose. Decay spread across the floor from Shigaraki's touch, disintegrating everything. And my first act with this power is killing you. Izuku pulled both the inverted spear and split soul katana. You can try. Shigaraki moved faster than should be possible, crossing the room in a blur. His hands reached for Izuku, decay activating. Everything he touched disintegrated. Walls, floor, furniture turned to dust in seconds. Izuku dodged, but Shigaraki had multiple quirks now. Air pressure blasted from his palm, slamming Izuku into a wall. Structural supports groaned, the building beginning to collapse. Izuku recovered, thrust the inverted spear toward Shigaraki's chest. Nullification rippled through the villain's quirk system. For a crucial second, all the enhanced powers shut down. Izuku followed with the split soul katana, aiming for the neck. Shigaraki caught the blade with his gauntleted hand. Somehow, impossibly, he stopped the cursed weapon mid-swing. All for One prepared me for your tricks, Shigaraki said. Black tendrils erupted from his back, some kind of manifested quirk. They grabbed Izuku, lifted him, began to crush, ribs cracked. Pain exploded through his chest. The tendrils were impossibly strong, enhanced by layered quirks that multiplied their power. Izuku pulled a grenade from the cursed worm and triggered it point blank. The explosion was massive, blowing out the entire third floor. Both fighters were launched into the open air as the mansion began to collapse. They fell together, trading blows mid-air. Izuku's blade cut through tendrils. Shigaraki's decay disintegrated chunks of debris. They hit the ground hard, cratered concrete, and immediately resumed fighting. This was it. The real battle. Everything before had been preparation for this moment. Shigaraki had overwhelming quirk advantage. Multiple powers, massive versatility, enhanced regeneration. Izuku had skill, experience, and weapons that ignored conventional advantages. They clashed again and again. The compound became a war zone. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread. Villains and heroes fought on all sides, but the real battle was here, in the center, between these two. You can't win, Shigaraki screamed, decay spreading across the battlefield. I have all for One's power, every quirk he stole, every ability he mastered. You're just a human with fancy weapons. Good, Izuku said, dodging a decay-infused strike. Humans are unpredictable. He feinted with the inverted spear, drawing Shigaraki's attention, then threw the split soul katana like a javelin. The cursed blade pierced Shigaraki's shoulder. Not a lethal hit, but it did something worse. It severed the connection between Shigaraki and the vestige of All for One living inside him. For the first time since receiving the power, Shigaraki was alone in his own mind. The villain screamed, clutching his head. No, master, don't leave me. Izuku pulled the inverted spear back and charged. Every quirk Shigaraki activated, the spear nullified. Every defense, the spear pierced. He backed the villain into the ruins of the mansion, relentless, giving no quarter. You're just a puppet, Izuku said coldly. All for One's meat puppet, dancing on strings you don't even see. He gave you power to make you dependent, to control you, and you let him. Shut up! Decay exploded outward, disintegrating everything in a massive radius. Izuku jumped clear, using the chain of 1,000 miles to swing onto a remaining structure. From this vantage, he could see the full battlefield. Heroes and villains clashing, the compound in ruins, Todoroki and Bakugo fighting back-to-back against overwhelming numbers. They were losing. Slowly, but measurably. He needed to end this. Now. Izuku pulled every remaining explosive from the cursed worm's storage. Grenades, C4, det cord, everything. He armed them all simultaneously. What are you doing? Shigaraki realized the danger. Winning. Izuku threw the explosives into the mansion's ruins, where support structures were already failing. Then he triggered them all at once. The explosion was apocalyptic. The entire mansion collapsed inward, a controlled demolition that sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Villains were buried under rubble. Heroes were forced to retreat or be caught in the blast, and in the center of the explosion, Shigaraki tried desperately to decay the falling debris before it crushed him. Izuku used the chaos to get close. While Shigaraki was focused on survival, Izuku drove both the inverted spear and split soul katana into the villain's chest simultaneously. Double nullification. The spear shut down Shigaraki's quirks. The katana severed the connection between his body and All for One's lingering influence. Shigaraki fell, gasping, bleeding, defeated. You actually... His eyes were wide, disbelieving. How? Because I don't rely on power I can't control. Izuku pulled both blades free. I use what I have, nothing more, and that's enough. Shigaraki tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. The master, he'll come back. He always comes back. Maybe, but you won't be there to see it. Izuku raised the split soul katana for a killing blow. Midoriya, don't! Aizawa's voice. The teacher had arrived with the main hero force, was rushing toward them. He's defeated. We can arrest him. You don't need to. He's All for One's successor. As long as he's alive, the threat continues. Izuku's blade didn't waver. This is the only way to be sure. That's not justice. That's just murder. I know. Izuku looked at Aizawa, his green eyes empty. I've never pretended to be just. The blade came down and stopped inches from Shigaraki's throat, not because Izuku hesitated, because a small hand had grabbed his wrist. Eri, she'd somehow followed them, had been watching from the ruins. Her red eyes were wide, pleading. Don't, she whispered. Please don't. You're better than this. I'm not better than anything. I'm a killer. It's what I do. No, you're someone who saved me, who visits me every day, who made me feel safe when I thought I never would again. Tears streamed down her small face. You're not just a killer, you're more than that. Please, be more than that. Izuku stared at her, at this tiny child who'd survived hell and somehow found hope anyway, who believed in him despite seeing exactly what he was. The blade trembled in his grip. If I let him live, he'll come back. He'll hurt more people. Then the heroes will stop him. Properly, legally, the way it's supposed to work. Eri's grip on his wrist tightened. Please, don't be like the people who hurt me. Be like the person who saved me. Around them, the battlefield had gone quiet. Heroes and villains alike had stopped fighting, were watching this moment. Izuku looked at Shigaraki, defeated and bleeding, at the blade that could end the threat permanently, at the logical, tactical decision to eliminate an enemy who would absolutely return if given the chance. Then he looked at Eri's pleading face, and slowly, with effort that felt like lifting mountains, he lowered the blade. Damn it. Aizawa immediately restrained Shigaraki with his capture weapon. Other heroes rushed in to secure the defeated villain, provide medical attention, prevent escape. Izuku stepped back, returned his weapons to the cursed worm's storage, and felt something inside him shift, not softening, not redemption, just evolution. He was still the Sorcerer Killer, still brutal, efficient, willing to kill when necessary, but maybe Eri was right. Maybe he could be more than just that. Maybe. The aftermath took weeks to process. The Paranormal Liberation Front was dismantled, hundreds of villains arrested, their organization shattered. Shigaraki was imprisoned in Tartarus, in a cell specifically designed to nullify his multiple quirks. All for One's influence over Hero Society had been dealt a massive blow. Not eliminated, that would probably take years if it was even possible, but significantly reduced. The HPSC was both grateful and terrified of Izuku's capabilities. They'd witnessed what he could do when unleashed, the efficiency with which he eliminated threats, the cold willingness to do whatever victory required. They also witnessed him choose not to kill when he easily could have. That choice mattered more than they'd expected. Nezu called Izuku to his office for a final evaluation. You've completed far more than our original arrangement required, the principal said, sipping tea. You've protected the school, saved students, eliminated multiple high-level threats, and recently prevented a catastrophic villain organization from destabilizing society. I'd say your debt to UA is more than repaid. So I'm free to leave, if you want. The HPSC's contract is fulfilled. You could return to mercenary work, disappear into the shadows, live however you choose. Nezu's eyes glittered. But I don't think you want that anymore. What makes you say that? Because you have something now that you didn't have before. Connections. People who matter to you. Eri, your classmates, even some of the faculty. You've found something worth protecting beyond your own survival. Izuku didn't argue. Couldn't, because it was true. So what happens now? He asked. That's up to you. You could graduate from UA, become a licensed hero, work within the system while maintaining your edge, or you could forge your own path, something between hero and mercenary, operating in the gray areas where official heroes can't go. That sounds illegal. Many of the most effective things are. Nezu smiled. I'm not suggesting you abandon your nature, Mr. Midoriya. I'm suggesting you find a way to apply it constructively. The world needs people like you, those willing to do the difficult things, make the hard choices, operate where others won't. Heroes won't accept that. Some won't, but others will recognize necessity when they see it. Aizawa has already expressed willingness to work with you permanently. Endeavor, despite his initial hostility, has admitted you're effective. Even All Might, in his final days as a hero, has acknowledged your value. Izuku thought about it, about the future beyond survival, about actually choosing a path rather than just reacting to circumstances. I'll stay at UA, he said finally, finish the program, get the license. After that, I'll see what needs doing and do it. A very pragmatic approach. Nezu stood, extended a tiny paw. Welcome to UA properly, Mr. Midoriya, not as a contracted consultant, but as a genuine student. Izuku shook the paw carefully. It felt like crossing some kind of threshold, acknowledging a change that had been building for months. He wasn't just the Sorcerer Killer anymore. He was something else, something new. He didn't have a name for it yet, but that was fine. He'd figure it out as he went. The final semester of the year passed quickly. Class 1A prepared for advancement to their second year. Students who'd started as naive children playing at heroism had been forged into actual combatants through repeated trials. Todoroki had mastered both ice and fire, using them in perfect synchronization. Bakugo had learned teamwork without losing his aggressive edge. Ida had developed true leadership skills. Uraraka, Tsu, Tokoyami, Jiro, all of them had grown measurably. And Izuku had taught them, intentionally or not, that strength wasn't just about quirks, that tactics, preparation, and willingness to act decisively mattered as much as raw power. They graduated to second year with a ceremony full of speeches about growth, potential, and the future of hero society. Izuku stood with Class 1A, wearing the uniform properly for once, and felt almost content. Not happy. Contentment was different from happiness, but it was closer than he'd ever been before. After the ceremony, Eri found him. She'd grown stronger over the months, her physical scars fading, psychological wounds slowly healing. She smiled more now, laughed occasionally, trusted more easily. I made this for you, she said, holding out a small drawing. It showed a figure in dark clothes, holding two swords, standing protectively in front of a smaller figure. The art was childish but clear, her and him, the day he'd saved her. You're my hero, Eri said simply. The word still felt wrong, but less wrong than before. Thank you, Izuku said, taking the drawing carefully. She hugged him, quick, then running off to where Aizawa was supervising. Izuku watched her go, the drawing in his hand, that uncomfortable tightness in his chest. She's right, you know, Todoroki said, approaching. You are a hero, just not the kind anyone expected. I'm a killer who occasionally saves people. That's not heroism. Maybe heroism is more flexible than we thought. Todoroki's mismatched eyes were thoughtful. All Might saved people by being the strongest, most hopeful symbol possible. You save people by being willing to do what others won't. Both are necessary. Both matter. That's very philosophical for you. I learned from watching you that sometimes the right answer isn't the obvious one. Todoroki extended his hand. Thank you, Midoriya, for everything you've taught us. Izuku looked at the offered hand. 6 months ago, he would have ignored it. 3 months ago, he would have rejected it. Now he shook it. Don't thank me yet. Second year is going to be harder, more dangerous. The villains won't stop just because we want them to. Good, Todoroki said, almost smiling. We learned from the best. We're ready. That night, alone in his dorm room, Izuku stood at the window looking out over UA's campus. The cursed worm coiled contentedly beneath his shirt, weapons stored and ready. His body ached from training. He'd pushed himself harder than ever recently, preparing for whatever came next, because something would come. All for One was imprisoned, but not dead. Shigaraki was contained, but not destroyed. The Paranormal Liberation Front was scattered, but not eliminated. Threats remained. Would always remain. But for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya wasn't facing them alone. He had classmates who'd become comrades, had teachers who actually gave a damn, had a tiny traumatized girl who saw him as her hero despite everything. He had connections, ties, reasons to fight beyond simple survival. The Sorcerer Killer was evolving. Becoming something more complex than just a weapon with human skin, he was becoming, what? A hero? Not really. He was still too damaged, too willing to kill, too cold for that title. A vigilante? Closer, but not quite right either. Maybe he was just Midoriya Izuku, no grand title, no dramatic designation, just a person who'd survived hell and decided that maybe, possibly, some things were worth protecting besides himself. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Impressive work with the Paranormal Liberation Front. You've proven your worth repeatedly. When you're ready to discuss serious opportunities, contact me. The world needs people like you. Interested party. Izuku deleted the message. His mercenary contacts were persistent, always trying to pull him back to that world, but he'd made his choice. For now, at least. He pulled out Eri's drawing, looked at the crude representation of himself as her protector. "You're my hero," she'd said. The words echoed in his mind, uncomfortable and strange and somehow against all logic, right. Maybe he wasn't a traditional hero, maybe he never would be, but he could be Eri's hero. Class 1A's ally, someone who stood between threats and people who mattered. That was enough. For the first time in his life, it was enough. Midoriya Izuku, the abandoned child, the mercenary, the sorcerer killer, closed his eyes and acknowledged the truth he'd been avoiding. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And tomorrow, when new threats emerged, when villains attacked, when the world showed its ugly face again, he would face them not as a weapon, but as a person with connections, with purpose, with something worth protecting. The Sorcerer Killer was dead. In his place stood something more dangerous. A hunter with a reason to fight, and the villains hiding in the darkness would learn to fear that difference. Because Midoriya Izuku had evolved beyond simple survival, he had found something worth dying for, which meant he'd become someone worth killing for. The game had changed, the stakes had escalated, and the future, for the first time in his life, held something other than emptiness. It held possibility.
A massive thank you to the legends supporting the channel. Starting us off, a huge shout out to our pro hero, Javon McGuire. Next up, thank you to the absolute pillars of the community, our symbol of peace tier. Neostar Productions, Asael Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Agros Saxa 298, Sunawin 631, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddy_Rose, Omega, Toxic Rune, Chris Talley, Alexander Thompson, Remorsefuls, Blackvein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift Skater, Akano Hijima, Corey Tokars, Kewen Thompson, Yan, Exo Hope 3656, Devin Black, Crow, Yizbrid, Roberto Ramos Di Cristina, Dasher Games, Joe Bros, Rave on Crimson River, Dante Alistar, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, KC, Howie60, Ignacio, and Albert.
And finally, massive love to the heavy hitters holding it all down, the hope of the universe. Debbie Vo, Gov Dizzles 21, LS Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, I Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Juan, I'm Calver, and Colsey. You guys are the best.
If you got chills seeing the Sorcerer Killer dominate the MHA universe, smash that like button. We're just scratching the surface of this heavenly restrictions potential. Don't miss the evolution of this beast. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to witness who Izuku hunts next. Thanks for watching.